Chapter 39, Limit Practice 2 Days. Within just 2 days, the peaceful small town had completely changed in appearance. One after another, temporary bamboo houses raised straight from the ground, with writings of each aristocratic family's name on each of them. Geniuses came from all directions. They gave up their opportunity to take the exam in their hometowns, but took part in the exam of the Sword Palace in this small town. For a time, clouds gathered, driven by the wind. The history of the small town opened onto a new page. However, it had temporarily no relationship to Yunxi. After getting the premonition that some big trouble would happen in the small town, he had no hesitation in directly picking up camping tools and food, hiding with Mayor in a secret location of the hill. Here was also a location he had found once when he was playing games with his childhood sweetheart. It was a hiding spot in the small secret valley. In the end of the valley, there was a big beautiful tree. On the tree, there was a clumsy, but cute umbrella-shaped mark. On one side, it was Yunxi's name, and on another side, it was Huahua's name. Yunxi and Huahua will stay together forever. Looking at the handwriting he wrote when he and Huahua both were still young, Yunxi wasn't able to stifle a laugh. At that time, Huahua and he were still naive. They never realized how wide was the gap between their identities. Children's feelings were always so pure and innocent. Okay, let me start limit practice from now on. After putting up the tent under the tree, Yunxi drew out his long sword, which he specially bought from the blacksmith's shop in the town. By imitating the sword Huahua used, this sword was as much as possible like the elite-level longsword of the White Lotus Sword Palace. However, it was just a good product sold in the blacksmith's shop, after all. It wasn't possible for it to be as sharp as Huahua's sword. However, it didn't matter. Because Yunxi wasn't going to use the sword to fight. He wanted to train in the limit practice that he learned from Huahua's seed. Push-ups for 1,000 times, sit-ups for 1,000 times, squat for 1,000 times, run 100 miles, and brandish his sword for 10,000 times. Based on this, it was a circle. Over and over. It was totally a challenge to the limit of the human body. You could even say that the human physique itself had made it clear that it was an impossible practice. It was said that long ago, a man kept practicing himself like this for 3 years and became an invincible warrior. However, as the price, he became a baldy. The baldy Saitama, from One Punch Man. Okay, Yunxi didn't think that he could overdraw his life to keep practicing this limit practice for 3 years. The man who could do it must have a monster-like physique. He was just a first-ranked swordsman. Even the 3 basic trainings were impossible for him. The mortal rank swordsmen were just flesh and blood, even if they had all sorts of magic-like methods just like hero rank warriors. Now, Yunxi had only come into contact with 2 hero rank warriors. However, the twin witches weren't at the same level as ordinary hero rank warriors. Because Yunxi chose the wrong reference, he had a great misunderstanding about the gap between mortals and hero rank warriors, and had an illusion that his strength was extremely insignificant. That was the reason why he was here, preparing to challenge the limit practice. Which in his memory, Huahua didn't even finish when she was still at the first rank. The first is push-ups for 1,000 times. Sticking the long sword in front of himself, and standing under the tree he made the promise with Huahua, Yunxi started to challenge the inhuman limit practice. 1, 2, 3, 4, relying on his first-rank limit of physical fitness after absorbing the green hippo's soul, Yunxi kept to it, doing 500 push-ups. Then, he couldn't hold up and laid on the ground. Sure enough, my first-rank body can't handle this. Yunxi's eyes were covered by his own sweat. It was his strong will that supported him to hold on to his limit. And the fact also proved that as just a first-ranked swordsman, no matter how strong-willed he was and how perfect he could save his physical strength, it was impossible to finish 1,000 push-ups. It wasn't like common push-ups. No matter the posture, height, or the position to support the body, it had an extremely high demand on all aspects. Ordinary people would go into convulsions, toppling down to the ground before they did 100 push-ups. Release the seed's power. At the beginning, when Yun-shi just obtained the green hippo's blood seed, he had a guess. And now it was the time to verify it. He wasn't going to release all the blood power from the seed just like what he did in the battle, but slowly released out the blood power from the seed, using it to help his practice. With the help of the tremendous blood power of the green hippo seed, he could do what he wasn't able to do in the past, and successfully finish the seemingly impossible limit practice. A little warmness appeared inside Yun-shi's body, and then spread to his 4 limbs. Yes, this was the feeling. Like this, he could go beyond the limit of his mortal body. It was deserving to be the fierce green hippo seed. Yun-shi even felt a little pity. Ashen, do you have more hippos? By using the green hippo's blood seed, Yun-shi broke through his body limit. He did 1,000 push-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000 squats, and run for 100 kilometers. With the flashing light of his sword, he started to practice the last part, and it was also the part that needed the most attention, brandishing his sword 10,000 times. Keeping the speed steady, brandishing his sword stably and powerfully. Making sure that it wasn't beyond his limit. This was the most important and core part. He had to do this after he finished the previous part of the limit practice. As he kept his eyes and heart focused on the same line, Yun-shi stood under the big tree, brandishing his sword methodically and focusedly. Sweat continuously flowed down from his forehead, but it couldn't affect his concentration. Again, Huahua's sword seed grew slowly. In this nameless small valley, Yun-shi took the first and most important step in his life. Done. In the encampment of the twin witches, White Lotus happily lifted up the star and moon ring. Around her, there were the craftsmen who were hurriedly called from the White Lotus Sword Palace. They looked at the artifact's shining golden red light of sun, silvery white light of full moon, and the bright light of stars in White Lotus's hands, showing a relieved expression. After working hard for 3 days and nights, she finally made the perfect fruit. From now on, the White Lotus Sword Palace had another legendary artifact. The Star and Moon Ring, the secret artifact which was forged by the White Lotus Holy Virgin personally. Look! Its golden red halo was so bright and as holy as the sun. It's beautiful. Red Lotus looked at the finished artifact, the Star and Moon Ring, in surprise. If she didn't know its origin, she wouldn't believe that it was made of a mycalyx. Because this is the miracle of love. White Lotus put the Star and Moon Ring on her finger and smiled sweetly. He's my son. Chapter 40, Exit 9996. 9997. 9998. 9999. 10,000. After brandishing his sword 10,000 times, Yun-shi finished his first round of limit training. He felt dizzy and empty of all his strength, collapsing under the big tree. So tired, so painful, so sad. Was this the feeling of continuously going over his own limit? No wonder even Huahua couldn't finish this challenge when she was at the first rank. Vaguely, Yun-shi felt that his consciousness was fading, and his body twitched with pain. His muscle, bones, and nerves all screamed badly, suing his grievous limitation training. The beat of his heart became fast, then slow. Its rhythm was completely messed up. Woo-woo. When Yun-shi felt that he was dying, he heard a familiar voice. Opening his eyes, Yun-shi saw that his star fairy was biting a big piece of rolled leaf and running to him. Swish! Cold water drops dropped on Yun-shi's exhausted body, bringing him a little vitality. Mayer's healing power had been already exhausted when Yun-11 brandished his sword 3,000 times. She was so tiny. The only thing she could do for Yunxi was use these kinds of leaves to bring cold and clear water from the stream outside of the valley, to cool down Yunxi's overheated body. "You are such a good girl," Yunxi smiled as he looked at Mayer's expression of worry. As he looked at Mayer, he felt that he could still keep on training. Several days passed very quickly. Soon after, it was the day before the exam of the Sword Palace. From all corners of the White Lotus Sword domain, the geniuses and people of good families, as many as there were qualified to take the exam, all came to this small town which was, on the map, an inconspicuous area of the sword handle. Not only so, there were also many geniuses from other sword domains. Among all of them, 3 of them were above all the geniuses as the 3 strongest people accepted by everyone at the Sword Palace exams. Child Yunhe, he was the first in succession to the famous Yunhe city in the White Lotus Sword domain. He was 18 years old, a 3rd-ranked swordsman, the master of the famous twin swords Crane Wings. He was handsome, generous, and graceful, known as the famous sword genius within 10,000 kilometers. When he was 16 years old, as a 2nd-ranked swordsman, he was already able to join the Sword Palace, but he didn't. Due to some unknown reason, he waited till he became a 3rd-ranked swordsman. And now, he was taking part in the exam of the Sword Palace. Child Si Nian, he was from the middle part of White Lotus Sword domain, Sinian City. He was a genius with mixed blood from the Western Gods domain. He used a 2-handed broadsword, which was rare in the Sky Sword Gods domain. He was a 3rd-ranked swordsman, too. Unlike traditional swordmen in Sky Sword Gods domain, his career was a heavy swordsman. He was over 2 meters tall, strong and powerful, and looked pretty exotic. The last genius came to the small town later. It was said that he was the strongest genius who came from a high-level sword domain of the Sky Sword Gods domain. He was Child San Quan, a real great genius. He was a swordsman, but also a Taoist priest and an alchemist. In the meanwhile, he frighteningly practiced the 3 to the 3rd rank at the same time. His strength already earned him a pre-approved quote of White Lotus Sword Palace. However, he refused the pre-approved quote to take the exam personally. Yunhe, San Quan, Si Nian. They appeared as 3 geniuses who had inherited the name of their cities. Many people exclaimed that they would create a new history for the exam of the White Lotus Sword Palace. Hence, they were also regarded as 3 hot candidates of the exam, and also had the same likes and dislikes. So, they built a small group and took the strongest one, Child San Quan, as their leader. Nearly all the people here naturally thought that the first 3 places of the exam of the Sword Palace had been decided before it started. For the 3 geniuses, they had reached the 3rd rank at the age of 18, and they were the strongest ones amongst them. Child San Quan had reached the 3rd rank in 3 different careers. The only question was who was the number 1, 2, and 3 among the 3 geniuses. If judging from their personal strengths, obviously as a genius who came from a high-level sword domain, Child San Quan was the number 1. However, Child Yun he had his heirloom, the famous twin swords, Crane Wings. And Child Si Nian was born with superhuman strength and had the strongest attack amongst the 3. In the end, among the 3 geniuses, who would be the number 1 in the exam which was conducted by the twin witches? These people came from everywhere in the White Lotus Sword domain, and had made various bets. Everyone was expecting the start of this unusual exam of the Sword Palace. No one noticed that from the mountains, a ragged boy with clear eyes was walking out from the valley. In the bright sun, the boy's body looked more firm and concentrated compared to when he first went into the valley. Especially his big eyes. Inside his black pupils, you could see a vague sword spirit flying in them. It meant that he had engraved sword skills into his blood and touched the edge of the realm of psychic communion. Starting from the beginning of the Stars trial, he stumbled blindly to find the rules, to his 120 deathful battles with the green hippo. Till he killed the green hippo in the real world. In just 2 days, the boy had experienced too much and obtained power which was already beyond his imagination. After practicing for several days and nights in the valley, the boy continuously overdrew himself and used the seed of the green hippo to help train himself. Now, the boy finally cleared up what he had obtained. And then, he naturally reached the second rank. The understandings and experiences of Hua's seed brought him to a door of a new world. It helped him understand the world in the eyes of his childhood sweetheart. The seed of the green hippo and his experience of death 120 times helped him overcome his limits and obtain the perfect state of mind to stay calm even when he was facing death itself. The limit training came from Hua's memories. It helped him unify his essence, energy, and spirit, reaching the limit which countless geniuses couldn't reach when they were still mortals, psychic communion. The boy who walked out of the valley, Yunshi, indeed became stronger. Not only his body, but also his persistent heart. Overcoming his limit again and again brought him an incredible self-confidence. You could say that at the time he fought against the green hippo, he was still a newbie who just learned parts of Hua's talent and still needed the help of the environment to win his battles. But now, he had already mastered the true key and opened the realm of warriors. The door to a great future had been opened for him. Much, much later, when Yunshi recalled his naive period, he finally understood that, when he stayed in the valley to hone himself, what a great change the limit training brought him. However, at this moment, he still didn't know that his fate had been changed due to the twin witches. Chapter 41, The Trial Reopens of Mayor, Thank You. Holding his tiny star fairy in his arms, Yunshi quickly moved using the skill, Quicksilver Motion, and expressed his thanks to the cute and sensible star fairy. It was way too difficult to do the limit practice in the empty valley. Every time he finished one turn of the limit practice and fell to the ground under the big tree, Maya would lick his ears. Her tiny body went back and forth between the valley and the stream, bringing him life-saving water. Every time Yunshi felt that he couldn't keep on, that his soul and body both had reached the limit, it was Maya that made him summon up his last strength, forcing him to go on. If the green hippo's seed supported his body in finishing the grievous limit practice, then Maya was like a lighthouse in his heart, making him see hope when he was wandering in the sea of pain. Now, Yunshi was confident about the second star trial tonight. Yes, today was the 7th day after the first trial. The time Mayor said that the second star trial was going to start. In the deep of night, Yunshi sat on the roof of his home, looking at the starry sky. Around him, the small town was so lively that it almost felt unfamiliar to Yunshi. One after another, bamboo houses occupied the place where families Yunshi knew should be. The bamboo houses were very tall. The taller one was even over 100 meters with huge banners hanging down from it. Wishing that child Yunhee, Si Nian, and San Quan passed the trial of the Sword Palace. It wasn't the only banner like this. Even as Yunshi headed back to town, he got to know the 3 hottest childs of the exam of the Sword Palace. Isn't that too exaggerated? These childs, looking at the small town that was decorated with lanterns and colored hangings and bursting with happiness, Yunshi had never seen his hometown so lively. In fact, you know nothing about power. Yunshi reached out his small hands, feeling the light of the stars emanating from the sky. Unlike the last time, this time he could clearly feel the coming of the power of the stars. Compared to the last trial, this time, the scale of this trial increased by 10 times. Did that mean the stars thought there were 10 times the amount of people that had the qualifications to enter the trial? If so, just let it start. Perhaps tonight would be very long. With this kind of anticipation, Yunshi went back to his small room, counting down to the time he had to enter the world of trial. 10, 9, 8, 7. Did I drink too much? Child Yun, he was drinking with several noble friends, but he suddenly felt very sleepy. He couldn't keep himself awake and lied on the table. Let's drink to our heart's content tonight. Let's walk together to the west. The noble childs who were drinking together with Child Yun, he were already drunk, and none of them found anything weird. They fell down one by one. At the same time, in another place of the small town, the other boys and girls who took part in the exam of the Sword Palace also felt very sleepy. Why am I so sleepy? That's strange. Child Si Nian was practicing his sword skill in the yard he just bought. He yawned and put down his two-handed heavy sword. The hexagrams are very auspicious and says that I should go to bed as quick as possible. Child San Quan was divining his luck for tomorrow and got a good prediction. He closed his eyes with satisfaction, sinking into deep meditation. However, this time, he fell asleep unconsciously. In the soft light of the stars, one after another, geniuses who came from all directions of the White Lotus Sword domain fell asleep unconsciously. Half an hour later, Yun Shi's childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua, also fell asleep. Finally, in the encampment beside the river, the twin witches stretched themselves together. It feels weird. I have a bad presentiment. Red Lotus rubbed her temples, trying to raise her spirit, but her eyes couldn't stop closing. Let's sleep, sleep, my sister. White Lotus was humming a soft and relaxing tune. Just like her sister, she also had an unknown presentiment. However, it was a very sweet presentiment. No, I can't sleep, damn it. Red Lotus's body shook for a couple of times, then finally laid down on the ground. Sister, let's have a good dream. White Lotus smiled sweetly, closing her eyes together with her sister. The second trial starts now. Final quest: the poor princess is locked up in an evil tower. Please defeat the evil stone soldier army and break into the tower to save the princess. Optional side quest: the brave girl is challenging the evil dragon. Go to become her partner and defeat the evil dragon. Armory opened. Gallery of spoils opened. Forging system opened. A series of notification tones rang in Yun Shi's ears. It wasn't as simple as the newbie trial. This trial was more difficult, and it was the first time there was a side quest that could be chosen. There were also the new armory, gallery of spoils, and forging system added in the trial. Opening his eyes, Yun Shi found that he was sitting beside a campfire in the sunset glow. As far as his eyes could see, there was a great tower sitting at the end of the coast. The dilapidated palaces were linked together by floating stone bridges, releasing an ancient aura of vicissitude. Obviously, the great tower was the location where the princess was imprisoned. Yun Shi had even expected who the princess was. After all, in the small town, only Kashit could be the most glorious and beautiful princess. Looking to the left, there was an active volcano emitting out red clouds to the sky. He could hear a dragon's roar coming from that place, and there were fierce griffins hovering above the volcano. That was the way leading to the hero. Since the heroine was so powerful that she was able to challenge the evil dragon, Yun Shi practically knew who she was. Last time, it was a single game line of the Sleeping Beauty, but this time there were two choices, the game line of heroine and the game line of the princess in the Great Tower. The love system of the stars liked to make Yun Shi face extra hard difficulties. Just like last time, the stars also gave Yun Shi the map of the trial. Yun Shi just took a glance, then the serried red points on the map scared him. Except for the green point of himself, the green point in the volcano zone, and the green point on the top of the Great Tower, they were all blood-red points. Kala! 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 It seemed that Yun Shi's coming activated the switch of this trial world. The stone soldiers in different palaces all opened their eyes one by one. Enemy. Invader. Find, eliminate. Yunshi hadn't yet walked away from the campfire, but he already felt that he was involved in great danger. Chapter 42, Stone Statue Legion, Ka-Law. 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 Unlike the newbie trial, Yunshi didn't have enough time to prepare for it. After the trial started, a crowd of stone soldiers rushed out from the palace. They didn't even give one 10 seconds to prepare. Within such a little time, Yunshi had only roughly observed the location, the palace, the height of the volcano, and the distance between the final tower and himself. Last was to choose weapons. In the newbie trial, Yunshi could only choose the newbie iron sword. However, this time, he had other choices. The first option was an iron sword, which Yunshi was very familiar with. It was obviously the newbie iron sword which followed him while he was killed by the green hippo for 120 times, but was finally thrown away in front of the dark forest because he had to escape from Hua Hua at that time. Not only this, he also obtained an armor. It was a pretty tattered cloth armor, but it was still better than nothing. The last one was a sizable, soft wooden shield. They were all the initial equipment Yunshi had found beside the campfire in this round of the star trial. However, before Yunshi decided which weapon was suitable for him, the crowd of stone soldiers had come to him. Kill! 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 These stone soldiers looked human, but they treated Yunshi like their sworn enemy, rushing forward at him. Wait! The newbie trial left Yunshi a wrong impression that the campfire area was an absolutely safe area. Before he even picked up his sword, he had been chopped down by countless weapons, and then his whole body was trampled into minced meat. The second trial, his death count, 1. After killing Yunshi, the stone soldiers walked in a circle along the campfire, then returned to the palace with satisfaction. 10 seconds later, Yunshi revived at the original place. Ka-Law! 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 Just as the stone soldiers walked back into the first palace, they immediately behaved as if Yunshi stirred up their hornet's nest, rushing toward him again. This time, Yunshi learned his lesson. He put on the cloth armor and held the newbie iron sword in his hand. As for the shield, he hesitated for a while but did not pick it up. After all, Hua Hua's seed didn't teach him skills for using the shield. After the time of a few breaths, the stone soldiers had come for him again. Come on! Yunshi had prepared for a cruel star trial. He stepped forward, rushing towards the dozens of stone soldiers with great courage. One hit. By using the quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword he learned in the valley, Yunshi took the lead in killing one of the stone soldiers. At the next moment, dozens of weapons chopped at Yunshi's body. 3 seconds later, another pool of blood stains appeared on the ground. 10 seconds later, Yunshi revived at the campfire again. He helplessly looked at the stone soldier army rushing at him from the distance again. Oh no, this wasn't what he expected. To fight one-on-one was completely unlike fighting against many. Even Hua Hua hadn't had the opportunity to fight against over 30 enemies. Moreover, they were not some weaklings, but elite warriors. By his estimation, the weakest one among them was at the top level of the first rank, and the strongest enemies were at the top level of the second rank. All of them had the strength to fight with Yunshi one-on-one, not to mention they were rushing forward at Yunshi trying to kill him together. When they gathered together, they were even more dangerous than the third-rank green hippo. At least, the green hippo's moves were full of flaws that could be caught by him. However, even if he could kill one of the stone soldiers who were transformed from the participants in the town, how was it possible for him to kill them all? This was the first time that Yunshi experienced the power of an army. No, are you kidding me? Yunshi revived again while holding the newbie iron sword in his hand. He looked at the palaces in the distance, counting the number of his enemies and showing a forlorn look on his face after that. How is it possible to kill them all? The difference between the newbie trial and the formal trial is too big. Once again, Yunshi felt how heavy and hot the star's love for him was. I won't give up. Even if you're the geniuses of the White Lotus Sword domain, I will go across your corpses to see my princess. Yunshi gnashed his teeth in anger. Relying on his iron-like will he practiced during the limit practice, his flying swallow sword and quicksilver motion, Yunshi took the initiative to rush toward the stone soldier army. The first attack of the flying swallow sword. Yunshi didn't save any of his strength. By relying on his speed, Yunshi took the advantage to kill one of the weaker stone soldiers first. A ball of green soul flew out from the stone soldier's corpse. It naturally flew into Yunshi's body and improved his physical strength a little. The second attack of the flying swallow sword. After measuring the angle, Yunshi brandished his sword. This time, he killed 3 stone soldiers together. However, his luck ran out. Before Yunshi used the last attack of the flying swallow sword, the assassin sword, various weapons had smashed down from the sky aiming at him from all directions. Those childs of noble families, who were drawn into the trial by the stars and transformed into stone soldiers, weren't ordinary people. If they didn't have enough power, how would they dare to take the test of the Sword Palace, which was conducted by the twin witches? The stone soldiers who were killed by Yunshi were the weakest among all the participants. They were just 16 years old, but they were also at the top level of the first rank. Chi! Before Yunshi had the chance to feel his improved after his body absorbed the soul, he had been slashed through, torn apart, and cut up by weapon after weapon. Green soul light spots flew out from his body and flew back to the palace. Yunshi observed that these souls were returned back to the stone soldiers again. So that was what the rule was. After killing his enemies, he still needed to absorb their souls. And once he was killed, the souls would fly out from his body and return back to their original bodies again. This also meant that Yunshi couldn't improve himself by killing the weaker enemies again and again. That was reasonable. Equivalent exchange was the basic rule of the world. If he could improve himself by killing the soldiers again and again, the Stars trial would be just a joke. So there was just one stupid but simple method he could choose. This was also the road the Stars trial pointed out for him. Becoming stronger bit by bit, activating his potential by wandering between life and death, and finally conquering the seemingly unconquerable road of trial. There wasn't any shortcut. On the road to the great tower where the imprisoned princess was, he had to sprinkle countless blood. No matter what quest he chose, the road leading to the princess or the road leading to the heroine, he had to pay with the price of blood. Come on, let's start fighting. In the face of the aggressive stone soldier army, Yunshi yelled. Chapter 43, Blood and Death. Kill, kill, kill. Till the blood flowed like a stream, till the sky became murky over the bloody earth. How many times had he died? 100 times, or far more. Yunshi had forgotten. Quicksilver motion, starting. Zagging and brandishing his sword. Chi! The sword blade cut through the first stone soldier's heart. Its blood sprayed in the air and stained Yunshi's cloth armor. The 13th. Flying swallow six-fold attacks. Continuous quicksilver motioning and zagging. It was not the common flying swallow triple attacks, but repeating the first move of the flying swallow attack for 6 times, bursting out the fastest and smoothest attack 6 times within the shortest time. 1, 2, 3. As the flying swallow hovered in the air, the stone soldiers it targeted fell down one by one, and out flew their green souls. Ha! With a stunning roaring, Yunshi had used his strength. But it was too early to change his posture, as a big and tall person jumped down from a high position and cracked Yunshi's head by using a big stone, tablet-like sword. Yunshi's blood winded through the ground. He also kept this guy in his mind. Boom! Under Yunxi's feet, the giant weapon struck the ground into debris. Yunxi slipped through the weapon's bombardment and the coordinated attacks of the stone soldiers. He diverted the four swords from locking onto his heart by lifting his shield up and was going to strike back, when he suddenly felt the back of his head go cold. Out of his sight, from the high above in the sky, where it obviously was beyond the reach of a human, a pair of glassy swords flew and hovered in the sky, with Yunxi's blood dripping from its blade. It was that guy. At that moment where Yunxi's head fell to the ground, he saw that inconspicuous but hateful enemy. Din. 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 With a stream of tinkling sounds of weapons, Yunxi skillfully moved the shield in his hands and blocked all the frontal attacks. Afterward, he made a backflip and dodged the whirling twin swords that dropped down from the sky. Flying Swallow six-fold attack. By using the collision size of the stone soldiers as his shield, Yunxi played his ace, the new learned deadly skill. 1, 2, 3. 3 stone soldiers' heads were cut off and flew to the sky. At the next second, a weird and longsword shadow flashed in the crowd. Yunxi felt his body go cold and his heart stop. Then, only blood red remained in front of his eyes. Again. It was that person. Out of the corner of Yunxi's eyes, Yunxi forced himself to look at that place, making out that person's unmatched and ethereal figure among these stone soldiers. Bang! 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 Yunxi's heartbeats made a whooshing sound that echoed in the empty frontage square of the palace. He had died 135 times. The main reason, death under siege. His head was cut off dozens of times, his body was torn to pieces dozens of times, he was trampled to death dozens of times due to loss of balance, and he was hacked dozens of times after falling to the ground due to taking an arrow to the knee. In the past, Yunxi thought that fighting desperately with the green hippo for 120 times was already the most violent massacre in the world. Now, he knew that he made a grave mistake. He just stepped in the battlefield of his first formal trial and didn't even get through the first level. However, he had already tasted death 3 times more than during the newbie trial. Come on, there are only you 3 left. Standing in the middle of a large number of broken arms and wreckage and stepping on the stone soldier's corpse, Yunxi held his shield and provoked the last 3 high-level stone soldiers, who were rushing out from the first palace. Yes, the shield. After killing enemies one after another by using Quicksilver Motion and Flying Swallow Sword, his killing record stopped at 17. Finally, Yunxi remembered that beside the campfire, there was a shield. Reality taught him that the 3 pieces of equipment the stars prepared for him in the trial were all indispensable. The newbie iron sword wouldn't wear and tear, so he didn't need to worry about if it would be curved in the killing. The cloth armor didn't have high defense, but it really could reduce deadly injuries and offer him the little necessary defense. The last one was the shield. Just like the newbie iron sword, the shield also wouldn't wear and tear. In the most critical moment, it could save Yunxi's life. Without the shield, Yunxi wouldn't have been able to kill the 27 stone soldiers. He finally got the opportunity to fight against the last 3 high-level stone soldiers. At least till now, this was his best achievement, and was also the most difficult challenge in the first level. Yunxi clearly remembered that he had been killed by the 3 high-level stone soldiers at least 200 times. In order to distinguish the 3 high-level soldiers from other common soldiers, Yunxi marked the 3 people as Stone Soldier number 1, number 2, and number 3. Stone Soldier number 1's strength was near the upper level of the 2nd rank. He was good at using 2 swords and had high speed. His special attack skill was whirling 2 swords. He could throw out the 2 swords and have them return to his hands by themselves. Yunxi had never seen such a sword skill. Stone Soldier number 2 was also at the upper level of the 2nd rank. He was mighty and adept at using the heavy sword. His special attack skill was leaping attack. His skill was simple and a little like the Green Hippo's straight-line attack, but the difference was that he often chose to attack Yunshi when he was in a hitback motion. His deadly leaping attack often made Yunshi face death directly. Stone Soldier number 3 was at the mid-level of the second rank. He was good at using the snake bone soft sword, which was a pretty rare weapon. His special attack was Spirit Snake's chaotic dancing. He was undoubtedly the weakest one among the 3 high-level stone soldiers. However, most of the time, it was him that killed Yunshi because he was the only one who didn't fear Yunshi's flying swallow sword. Arguably, it was his Spirit Snake sword skill that made Yunshi learn how to use the shield. Apart from this, Yunshi had found the method to kill the other 27 stone soldiers one by one. In the end, there were only the 3 strongest high-level stone soldiers that Yunshi had to deal with, who were so thorny and had completely different properties. The tallest enemy, Stone Soldier number 2, mumbled a few words and stood up first. Compared to Yunshi, who was covered in bumps and bruises and was too horrible to look at, this burly guy was not harmed at all and was in his best state. The other 2 people were also in the same state. They had also experienced those sanguinary battles, but the 3 people could keep themselves in their best state and weren't killed by Yunshi even once. This had proved their strength. They were at a high level, above the 27 deceased stone soldiers. Though they were called the childs of noble families, just like all the other people, they were true elites. The geniuses like Ashen, who had felt complacent just because of their little gifts, were not at the same level with them at all. They didn't use all their strength. They just coldly looked at Yunshi killing the stone soldiers and had no worries, because they were far weaker than them. The reason was simple: they all had the strength to kill Yunshi one-on-one. They mastered their family's inheritance. Even if Yunshi learned how to use Quicksilver Motion and Flying Swallow Sword, he couldn't fight against them. For them, Yunshi was just a toy they used to enjoy the feeling of killing. Chapter 44, Yunshi's Outbreak. Things became interesting. Stone Soldier number 2 carried his big sword, carelessly walking toward Yunshi. Compared to Yunshi, who was covered in bumps and bruises while holding a sword in one hand and a shield in the other, Stone Soldier number 2 was in a much better state. Most of the time Yunshi was killed by the 3 stone soldiers. They were the biggest factor that caused Yunshi's deaths. In regards to the boys and girls of noble families who were at the first rank or just entered the second rank in the common army, they were super elites. Every one of them was able to threaten Yunshi's life alone. In principle, Yunshi had Huahua's seed. He shouldn't be driven to the last ditch by them. If it were a fair battle, the winning percentage of Yunshi against any of them would be more than 90%. Unfortunately, fairness wasn't a thing that existed in the world. Yunshi already knew it when he faced the star trials the first time. If it was about talent or combat intuition, after obtaining Huahua's seed, he also obtained a huge advantage. However, they had a greater advantage than him. The biggest reason that caused his death every time: equipment. Yes. The reason why Yunshi was killed by the 3 people was because their equipment were way better than his. Stone Soldier number 1 had a pair of whirling swords. Stone Soldier number 2 had a big sword. Stone Soldier number 3 had a snake bone soft sword. They were all weapons of the best quality, which were made by using special methods, and even had a few special abilities. Mortals couldn't use hero rank weapons, so their weapons still weren't beyond the limit of the mortal rank. However, they were still 3 masterpieces of skilled craftsmen. It seemed that the whirling twin sword Stone Soldier number 1 owned had a special magnetism. No matter where he threw it to, it would eventually fly back to its owner. The big sword Stone Soldier number 2 owned weighed up to over 100 kilograms. It was a heavy weapon that was only fit for people who were born with superhuman strength. The snake bone soft sword Stone Soldier number 3 owned was the most terrible and fatal evil sword among the 3 weapons. It even possessed a few abilities that normally only hero-rank weapons had. At the very moment he brandished his sword, it could cheat its enemy's sight and spatial sense. But as for Yunshi, he had only a newbie sword, a newbie cloth armor, and a newbie wooden shield. The three people all had swords that fitted them the most, they had experienced the best education since their childhoods, and their power also were all better than Yunshi's. Yunshi could only defeat them by using his talent and his third-rank combat intuition. Unfortunately, at the mortal rank, weapons and equipments were more important than Yunshi's imagination. This was the impassable wide gap among ordinary people and childs. It was the largest factor that couldn't be surpassed by talent. At the mortal rank, children of noble families had craftsmen specially making weapons for them, plus they could learn their family's sword skills. Compared to common swordsmen who were at the same rank as them, they had overwhelming advantages. Yunshi didn't know where the three top-level stone soldiers were from and who they were, but after experiencing battles again and again, he had clearly touched the limit that common swordsmen could reach. Weapons were really important. The first time, Yunshi began to think more seriously about this point, what common swordmen lacked most. You can't kill the dragon without good weapons and equipment. This was a proverb from the Western gods' domain. It implicitly told young boys who wanted to become strong, that they shouldn't ignore the importance of equipment, even if they were super geniuses. Good equipment could play an extremely important role in battle. Those childs who had received the best education knew it clearer than anyone. In that case, even though Yunshi had killed 27 stone soldiers, in the eyes of the three top-level stone soldiers, he was still just a so-so. Paw! Yunshi threw away his shield, though it had protected him countless times during the battle, and held his sword with one hand. I know it. You have better weapons than me, and received a better education than me. You were born with everything. Perhaps this is just a game in your eyes. A game of chicken, a game that was named as slaughter. But I tell you, you are wrong. You know nothing about true talent. Your biggest mistake was just sitting by and watching me kill the 27 stone soldiers who could originally help you. One fighting against 30 and one fighting against 3 are two totally different situations. Using Quicksilver motion. Giving up defense and using the skill of flying swallow sword to its limit. The first attack of the hovering swallow. Hee-haw. Stone Soldier 2 tensed his muscles. He held his heavy sword and made a whirlwind slash. Stone Soldier number 1 threw out his whirling twin swords from his hands. The twin swords dropped from the sky from a weird angle. Buzz! The snake bone's soft sword suddenly quivered in the hands of Stone Soldier number 3. It was like a viper that darted out from the grass, biting at the hovering swallow. In their eyes, Yunshi's flying swallow sword was the only move they thought that could threaten them. However, after observing him for so long, they had found the weakness of the flying swallow. The viper's bite that Stone Soldier number 3 understood was faster than the flying swallow. Who told you that I can only use the flying swallow sword? The first attack of flying swallow was not completed, because Yunshi proactively broke it. You were my first target. 9 cold sword lights flashed. It was way more swift, violent, and deadly than the snake bone's soft sword. Attack the weakest one. Though Stone Soldier number 3 had the weirdest sword skill and the fastest speed among all the 3 top-level stone soldiers, but he was still at the second rank. He was the weakest one among all the 3 people. In order to pursue speed, he must weaken his defense. From the beginning, Yunshi was aiming at Stone Soldier number 3, because his threat was the biggest and his weakness was also very conspicuous. Chi! 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 With the noise of wind and the noise of blood dropped down, before the smile disappeared from the corner of Stone Soldier number 3's mouth, his body had been cut into 2 by Yunshi. As a price, one of Yunxi's hands was chopped down by the whirling sword from the side. Even if I have only one hand, you still can't beat me down. Why had Yunxi left them to the end? Not only because they were the strongest, but also because they were the most stupid. They knew nothing about true talent. The sword was dancing. This time, Yunxi finally used the complete flying swallow triple attack. Stone Soldier number 2 looked very shocked. He put the heavy sword in front of himself, trying to block Yunxi's critical slash. You can't block my attack. The first attack chopped on the left part of the heavy sword. The second attack chopped on the right part of the heavy sword. The last attack was as elegant as the flying swallow, chopping down Stone Soldier number 2's head. Your greatest weakness was that you don't know the horror between life and death. After going beyond the limit of oneself, humans could have an outbreak of incredible potential that is even greater and beyond their own imagination. Chapter 45, Kill. How is this possible? As the only Stone Soldier left standing, Stone Soldier number 1 looked incredulously at Yunxi, who had lost one of his arms and was stained with blood. He remembered that 3 seconds ago, they still had an overwhelming advantage because the human body had its limit. After killing 27 Stone Soldiers, though there were just some trash fish or cannon fodders in their eyes, he should already be very tired. After seeing the brat's miserable appearance, the 3 people played the hunter game with ease, preparing to slaughter this unenlightened kid with the most terrible method. Your biggest arrogant mistake was to give up your numerical superiority. Yunxi panted. Though he had lost one of his arms, his eyes were still bright. The biggest difference between the first star trial and the newbie trial was that the number of his enemies grew by leaps. 1 versus 1, with Hua's seed, as a first-ranked warrior, Yunxi could even kill third-rank monsters like the fierce green hippo. 1 versus 30, though Yunxi already reached the second rank, he had already been killed 300 times by the Stone Soldiers, who were also at the second rank. By using the bloody reality, the stars were teaching Yunxi what the true battlefield was like. Here, no one would have a one-on-one fight with you. If you had to face over 30 enemies, flesh and blood could do nothing. Maybe when Hua was still at the second rank, she could kill the 30 people by herself with ease, but that didn't mean Yunxi could do the same. He wasn't Hua. Even though his combat awareness had reached the third rank, his body didn't. He needed to adjust his body, and try again and again, suffering attacks by using his own flesh and blood, in order to figure out what the weapons were, the battle skills, and attack habits of the 30 Stone Soldiers. Every death made Yunxi have a deeper understanding about the bloody battlefield. If the limit practice in the valley opened the door of the warrior for Yunxi, then you could say that the formal trial led Yunxi to finally step on the road behind the door. After dying for 315 times, Yunxi finally found the way to success. By using the 3 top-level Stone Soldiers' arrogance, he killed the other 27 ordinary Stone Soldiers. As the higher-level Stone Soldiers, they owned special legacies. Their biggest shortcoming was their disdain for those ordinary Stone Soldiers. They could never imagine that without the 27 ordinary Stone Soldiers, and with only themselves to fight with Yunxi, what a terrifying strength he could burst out with. Damn it, as his 2 hands held the whirling sword, streams of sweat dropped from Stone Soldier number 1's forehead. Why has this dream suddenly changed? He still remembered that just now, it was still a game to let them slaughter the stupid and overconfident newbie. However, in an instant, the newbie became a terrifying monster. He'd killed 2 of the strongest 3 people. No. I'm the strongest. They are just my sidekicks. As a top-level elite of a noble family, he wouldn't concede defeat. You are scared, Yunxi took a deep breath. Me? No. Stone Soldier number 1 held his twin swords. You beastie kid, you think your talent is enough to support your arrogance. You don't understand how many times we are better than you. I will let you witness my true power. You've lost one of your arms. In that case, do you still think that you can match up to me? His twin swords danced in the air. It was a sword skill Yunshi had never seen. In a flash, he lost the twin swords from his sight. It was no wonder that he was an elite of a noble family. Yunshi didn't look down on his opponent's strongest attack. Quicksilver motion. Flying swallow triple attack. There you go. It's just flying swallow attack. Stone Soldier number 1 had realized what Yunshi's sword skill was. Flying swallow attack was famous for its dexterity and elegance. It needed its practitioners to have a high flexibility and manual dexterity, a secret sword skill that could only be learned by people who had extraordinary talent. In the air, this sword skill was created by a real swordmaster. When he used this skill, he could cut off space. Besides, it was the key leading to more advanced sword skills. However, most of the people who were able to master this secret sword skill were girl geniuses who were 13 or 14 years old. Very few mortal males had the physical flexibility and manual dexterity to learn this sword skill. As time passed, the flying swallow sword nearly became a special sword skill that could only be learned by females. The whirling twin swords became 2 crane wing-like light balls. They flew from the left and right, crashing into each other with Yunshi's flying swallow triple attack. The first attack, his flying swallow, was bounced back by the whirling sword on the left. The second attack, his flying swallow, was bounced back by the whirling sword on the right. His last attack, the secret assassin attack, was also blocked by the crossed 2 swords. In the next moment, 2 swords cut through Yunshi's body together, giving him a deadly attack. How awesome was it? It wasn't inferior to the flying swallow sword at all. Yunshi felt like he was blind as a bat, which meant that his physical strength and mental strength both reached its limits. Just now, he killed Stone Soldier number 2 and number 3, he needed to pay for it. Especially the 9 sword lights he used to kill the Stone Soldier who had the Snake Bones soft sword. It was the first time that Yunshi used them. He couldn't control them perfectly yet. However, he hadn't failed yet. Arg. He didn't think that he had to fear anything. Since he didn't fall down, it meant that the fight hadn't ended yet, you child of a noble family. Bang! Though Yunshi's body was cut through by the 2 swords, he didn't hesitate to knock his body on the Stone Soldier number 1's body, and the next was his fierce headbutt attack. Ah! With a piercing scream, Stone Soldier number 1, who thought he had achieved victory, toppled to the ground. A blood stain appeared on his forehead. I say, you childs who grew up in a greenhouse, you underestimate the battlefield too much. Before I was able to do this, I had been killed by you 315 times. Yunshi ground his teeth, drawing the sword out of his own body and brandishing it towards him. The last Stone Soldier's head flew to the sky. A great deal of blood splurted out of his neck, staining Yunshi's body, making him dirtier. However, he was the winner. Compared to the battle between him and the Green Hippo, the battle this time was more brutal, desperate, and cruel. However, by relying on the sword talent Hua Seed brought him, and his will of never giving up and collapsing, Yunshi finally passed the first stage. In front of the first palace, an enormous number of green souls flew around on the battlefield, as Yunshi then absorbed them one by one. By absorbing them, Yunshi's wounds and awful scars all recovered bit by bit. The warm campfire lit up Yunshi's gritty face. The bloody sword blade was reflected in his eyes. Finally, he took his first step in the trial of blood and fire. The next step is to check my spoils. Chapter 46, Forging. Sure enough, the formal trial was unlike the newbie trial. Though it was difficult, in the first level of the trial, the first group of stone soldiers had killed Yunshi 300 times, but Yunshi had also obtained equal rewards from them. Yunshi only obtained the hippo's soul from the green hippo. However, besides the stone soldiers' souls, the stone soldier army Yunshi killed also provided him 4 spoils. 3 of the spoils made Yunshi feel the importance of weapons and the equipment Yunshi obtained in the formal trial. The 2 crane swords, they were 2 famous swords owned by the second child of the Yunhe family, and forged by the 17th successor of god craftsman Oyezi. They were 2 swords specially made for supporting the Yunhe sword skill. They had the property that could be thrown out to attack enemies by itself and then fly back to its master. The Yunhe sword skill, Yunshi couldn't stop himself from remembering the several people who were living in the highest bamboo houses in the small town. Child Yunhe was one of them. The next was the 2-handed sword that the number 2 stone soldier used. It was a standard 2-handed sword of the Thunder Army in the Western Gods' domains, the walking sword of Child Si Nian, and was made by the Western God Artisans Guild. It was 108 kilograms, and only a person with superhuman strength could use it. It could even be used as a siege weapon. The last one was the weirdest sword, which brought Yunshi the biggest trouble. Snake Bone's soft sword. It was the heritage spirit weapon of the White Lotus Sword domain Snake Bones family. It was held by the current child Snake Bones, and no one knew who its maker was. People only knew that it was probably forged from some hero-rank spirit snake's remnant parts. It was specially made for supporting the Snake Bones sword skill. After reaching the hero rank, its user could summon the shadow of the spirit snake out of the sword to fight for him. Spirit weapon. It was the first spirit weapon Yunshi obtained. Mortals couldn't display the true power of weapons at this level. They could only use them as the best mortal rank weapons. No wonder Child Snake Bones' attacks were so weird. The Snake Bones soft sword was a true spirit weapon. It was a great waste to be used by a mortal. But I can't use them at all. Looking at the spoils he obtained in his first formal trial, Yunshi was a little annoyed. No matter if it was the 2 crane swords or Snake Bone's soft sword, they were all specially made for supporting sword skills. Especially the Snake Bone's soft sword, it needed a special bloodline to match with it. In that case, Yunshi couldn't even use it. Now, Yunshi could only use the standard 2-handed sword of the Thunder Army from the Western Gods' domain. However, Yunshi's power was from Hua Hua Seed. His strongest sword skill was the lightweight and flexible flying swallow sword. It wasn't something that matched with the super giant sword which weighed 108 kilograms. Yunshi twisted the corner of his mouth slightly after he imagined his slender Hua Hua waving the 2-handed giant sword to attack someone. No, he couldn't use them. After picking and choosing, Yunshi found that now, the newbie iron sword was still the optimal choice for him. Fortunately, the 4th spoil gave Yunshi a hint that even though these weapons didn't fit him, they could still offer him their power. The last spoils were 10 small crystals that emitted teeny green lights. These fragments of green crystals were the essence of weapon enhancement. They could be used to forge and enhance low-level weapons. The fragments could be obtained after randomly defeating enemies or by disassembling low-level weapons. Disassemble them. Yunshi decided to disassemble the Snake Bones soft sword and the flying 2 crane swords, leaving only the 2-handed giant sword, because he thought that maybe he could use it. The method to disassembling weapons was simple. He had only to throw the weapon he couldn't use into the campfire. Ding! After a while, dozens of the fragments of green crystals flew out from the campfire and fell into Yunshi's hands. Well, the 2 crane swords gave me 4 fragments. The Snake Bones soft sword is worthy of being called a spirit weapon. It gave me 31 fragments. After counting out all the fragments of green crystals he had, Yunshi moved his eyes to the 4 pieces of equipment in his armory. The newbie iron sword, the newbie cloth armor, the newbie wooden shield, and the standard two-handed sword of the Thunder Army from the Western God's domain. At first glance, it would be best to use all the fragments of green crystals to forge and enhance the last spoil, because it could improve his combat capabilities immediately. The problem was that the strongest choice was not always the optimal choice. After hesitating for a while, Yunshi chose the newbie iron sword, because it was the most suitable one for him. Up to now, he had the highest proficiency with the newbie iron sword among all the weapons he had used. He decided to change for a better sword after obtaining more spoils after the trial. As for the uncommon standard two-handed sword of the Thunder Army, maybe he could learn how to use it in the future. Enhance the newbie iron sword. After putting the newbie iron sword in front of the campfire, Yunshi sent out the enhancing order. 3 green crystals immediately turned into ashes and began to enhance the newbie iron sword for the first time. The green light points infiltrated the newbie iron sword and engraved new grooves on the common newbie iron sword. Every groove would use 3 green crystals. After using up 9 green crystals, the newbie iron sword had 3 beautiful ancient-style grooves on it, which made it look better. However, the green crystals gave no response at all after that. Could it only be enhanced 3 times? Yunshi knew that this was the newbie iron sword's limit. It was limited by its material quality, and couldn't be engraved with any more grooves in it. To be honest, even the 3 grooves had surprised Yunshi. He didn't know how it was made, it was a superlative craftsmanship. After enhancing 3 times, it didn't change anything, no matter its center of gravity or quality of balance. However, its material quality and sharpness had been improved to a higher level. Perhaps the newbie iron sword couldn't compare to the two-handed sword of Thunder Army now, but it was already a fine sword. It could at least be regarded as a top-grade weapon among all mortal weapons. Especially when it had the special property, Never Wear, which was the only property of the newbie weapon. Well, then, it's your turn now. After successfully enhancing the newbie iron sword, Yunshi enhanced the newbie cloth armor and the newbie wooden shield to their limit without hesitation. As the same as the newbie iron sword, the enhancing limit of the newbie cloth armor and the newbie wooden shield was 3 times. However, the cloth armor needed 3 times more green crystals than the iron sword, which meant that it used 9 fragments of green crystals to engrave a single groove. After that, Yunshi had used all the fragments of green crystals he obtained in the first level. However, the expensive enhancement brought Yunshi power. After putting the 3 pieces of newbie equipment on his body, Yunshi could clearly feel the power the pieces of equipment brought him. Chapter 47, Lancers. The first was the newbie iron sword. The iron sword was the weapon Yunshi was most comfortable with. And now it was brand new, shining cold light from its sword handle to the point of the blade. Undoubtedly, its weight and center didn't change, but it was more comfortable and flexible to hold it in his hands. If there was a specific way to describe it, the newbie sword has enhanced Yunshi's combat power by over 150%. The next was the newbie cloth armor. After engraving 3 grooves on it, it supported Yunshi by defending his vulnerable body parts better. At least, he wouldn't be cut so easily again. As for the last one, the newbie wooden shield, it improved in stability and anti-impact ability, which also meant that Yunshi needed to master higher skills to use it. After experiencing violent battles, wandering between death and life, Yunshi was keenly aware of the importance of good weapons and equipment on the battlefield. If he had these 3 pieces of equipment at that time, perhaps he would only to die 100 times and would pass through the first test perfectly. This was also the reason as to why he enhanced all his equipment without any hesitation after getting the fragments of green crystal. Because of the horror of death, it made him feel the value of life more clearly. Humans shouldn't get used to death. Yunshi didn't become numb to the frequent deaths, but only valued his own life more carefully. He knew that people died if they were killed. In the real world, there was no bonfire that could revive him without limit. My strength improved by about 10%. At the end of the first stage of the trial, Yunshi absorbed all the souls of the stone soldier army. The souls of every single stone soldier only offered Yunshi a few improvements. Even after he had absorbed the last 3 stone soldiers' souls, they couldn't match up with the green hippo's soul at all. The energy in the souls of the stone soldier army was more than the energy of the green hippo's soul, about 1.5 times, but to kill them was far more difficult than to kill the green hippo. Yunshi even missed the stupid green hippo a little from the newbie trial. The green hippo's soul let Yunshi become a first-rank swordsman, and the green hippo's seed let Yunshi level up to 2nd rank after his limit practice. Well, though the hippo was supposed to be killed, but it would be regarded as a pretty good novice package. It would be better if Ashen summoned more hippos at that time. The next step is to choose the route. Standing in the empty palace, Yunshi looked at the doors leading to 2 different areas. Behind the 2 doors, there were wide bridges, and both bridges had several stone soldiers wandering on them. The door on the left led to the volcanic area, where gathered countless flames. It was the location of the young heroine, who was going to fight the evil dragon. The door on the right led to the great tower. At the end of the coastline waited the imprisoned princess. Now, Yunshi had to make his choice. Should he do the branch quest first, meeting with his childhood sweetheart and fighting against the evil dragon in the volcanic area with her, or directly finish the main quest, going to the Great Tower to save the princess of the twin witches? By the way, do they really need my help? Yunshi stood in the middle of the fork with a helpless expression on his face. The road to the left led to his childhood sweetheart Hua Hua. His strongest ability was obtained from her seed. Did such an awesome childhood sweetheart really need him to fight side by side with her? The road to the right led to the twin witches, Red Lotus and White Lotus. Hey, hey, hey! Was there anyone in the town able to imprison you? You are 2 hero-ranked, strong people who could even fly. Thinking about it, Yunshi felt that the world was so ridiculous. Sure enough, I should go meet with Hua Hua. Though in the hot spring White Lotus showed her love to him, but in Yunshi's heart, Hua Hua was the most important one. After all, they were childhood sweethearts who lived together for 10 years. Besides, she was also his first love. He knew her quite well. Since he had made the decision, Yunshi didn't hesitate anymore. He directly rushed out of the palace. Kala! Kala! In the hallway, a stone soldier holding a lance in its hand leaped into the air. It brandished its lance and locked on Yunshi's position. 3rd rank. It was a strong stone soldier at the 3rd rank. Was its class Lancer. The attack of a 3rd rank was far more powerful than the attack of a 2nd rank. Anyone who was at the 3rd rank was certain to have mastered a method to improve his power, and could break out with a power that mortals could never imagine. They were the strongest presences amongst all mortals. Each one of them could be regarded as a valiant general, who could fight one against thousands of enemies. Ding! The wooden shield he had just enhanced played a role at this crucial moment. It helped Yunshi block the mortal blow from the sky. Quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword. Combat instinct waking up immediately, Yunshi struck back. Chi! 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 The sharp lance danced like a violent storm in the air, breaking through Yunshi's flying swallow sword from the center and thrusting into Yunshi's chest. The enhanced newbie cloth armor worked again. It helped Yunshi block the unknown 3rd rank strong person's thrust. Cough! Yunshi vomited out blood from his mouth as he quickly stepped back. The enemy was too strong. He was more powerful than the 3rd rank enemies Yunshi met before. Even the green hippo wasn't at the same level with him. He was apparently a veteran of many wars. His lance never drew back, he was really a violent general-like man. And his lance skill was also a military style. It had no extra skills except the killing techniques themselves. He didn't give Yunshi the chance to adjust himself. After the thrusting, the violent general-like man swept Yunshi to the sky with his shield. Too bad, I lost my balance. Yunshi heard harsh howling. It was the fatal announcement of death. Just fight. Yunshi threw away the newbie wooden shield. He struck an unnatural pose and brandished his sword 9 times in the air. It was the secret sword skill he used to kill the owner of the snake-boned soft sword, a skill that could only be used after mastering Flying Swallow skill, killing his enemy by brandishing his sword 9 times from different angles and directions. Ah! With a surprised voice, the lance struck back 9 times on the 9 sword waves, breaking Yunshi's unique skill from the center again. He was too strong. What to do? Yunshi turned around in the air, standing on the stone pillar of the bridge. For the first time, he looked his opponent up and down. Yunshi surprisingly found that he wasn't a child of a noble family, but a real general wearing military armor. He even knew the general very well. When he was still young, the general and his army had passed by the small town more than once. Why is it him? Yunshi was dumbfounded. After all, he was a former general of the White Lotus Sword Domain, an army chief who had the title as Battle Deity. When he was young, the general was the idol of many boys in the town, and was the only third-rank person who emerged from the small town. As far as Yunshi knew, he was over 40 years old this year. Chapter 48. The 5 Great Generals. So, the trial didn't only pull the young childs of the noble families in here, but older people were in its selected ranges as well. Yunshi remembered that when he was young, a battle deity was a big deal. Not only him. There were also other generals who passed by the small town sometimes when they led their troops to go on patrol. They were called the 5 Tiger Generals, and were seen as great heroes. When didn't the young boys and girls in the town regard themselves as their heroes? Well, Yunshi remembered what happened after Hua Hua dueled them. In the duel, Hua Hua beat the 5 people down at the same time. After that, Hua Hua replaced the position of the 5 generals, becoming the unquestionable number 1 in the hearts of all the young boys and girls in town. He remembered that the invitation of White Lotus Sword Palace was also sent to her at that time. Since a genuine battle deity was here, Yunshi had a hunch that the several big and tall stone soldiers behind him were. Yunshi raised his head up, looking at the several familiar faces. They looked like they were cut from the same mold. They all had strong muscles, big and tall bodies, finely tempered, fine steel lances, and looked like 5 standard lancers. Yes, they were the famous 5 Tiger Generals in the mortal army of the White Lotus Sword Domain, the successors of the ruinous Star Sect, which was located in the Sword Blade region of the domain. It was said they were 5 cousins. Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Xin. These were the 5 Tiger Generals' names, and the true name of the general, battle deity, was Zhao Xiong. However, many people thought the 5 generals looked like they were cut from the same mold. No matter if it was their powerful muscles or frightening faces, it made everyone refuse to believe that they were not brothers. The reason people called them the 5 Tiger Generals was because their faces were too alike. General Zhao Xiong. Yunshi adjusted his breath. This was the first time he would fight against a general who was so powerful that he alone could replace 1,000 normal enemies. Yunshi felt a little nervous. No matter if it were battle skills, attack power, or fighting abilities, the green hippo who had only brute force couldn't be compared to General Zhao Xiong. Even if he ignored other factors, his simple sweep away skill had already forced Yunshi into a desperate situation. However, Hua Hua's seed sent him a strange piece of information. It seemed to be trying to tell Yunshi that general, battle deity, Zhao Xiong, wasn't unbeatable. At that time, when Hua Hua put herself against the 5 tiger generals and defeated them one by one, she wasn't at the 3rd rank, but at the 2nd rank, the same as Yunshi. Is this true? If Yunshi didn't obtain Hua Hua's seed, he would never have figured out that the 5 generals, who were also known as the 5 military strategists, had the same weakness. Well, it should be here. Yunshi looked around, then skillfully dashed towards General Zhao Xiong. Oh! General Zhao Xiong looked pretty excited. In the dream, he seemed to have returned to the most important battle in his life. At that day, his opponent was also so tiny and nimble, it seemed as if he could easily beat her down by a sudden strike. However, in the end, the battle ended with his crushing defeat. Not only him, but his 4 brothers, Xiao Ming, Xiao Chu, Xiao Chue, and Xiao Xin, were all defeated by the little girl's sword. That was the first time he realized how wide the gap was among geniuses and ordinary people, and that battle also became the turning point of his life. After being defeated by the sword skill of the genius girl, he finally realized the limit of his talent. He understood that he probably couldn't step on the road of the hero rank during his lifetime. Then, he gave up. He followed his family's arrangement, marrying a wife and having a son. Now, his children were already old enough to hold a lance. Perhaps that was the limit of his life. He had been pinning all his hopes on his children. Now, his son had succeeded his blood. Though his son could only practice with a wooden lance now, but his lance skill already looked like his father's, and would definitely surpass him. However, sometimes, when he woke up from a dream, he couldn't stop himself from imagining what would have happened if he had won that duel. He thought he wasn't the only one who thought so. His brothers, who also had gotten married and had children, would also imagine that battle. Zhao Ming, Zhao Xiong, Zhao Chu, Zhao Chue, and Zhao Xin, they were called the 5 tiger generals. They must have cared about that duel too much, so they had this dream together. The opponent in their dream wasn't a girl. However, his sword skill and battle style looked exactly like the genius girl they remembered. What a wonderful dream. After that battle, they had reflected on it countless times. They practiced their lance skills, thinking about the mistakes they made in the battle over and over again. Now, they finally had the opportunity to fight again in the dream. Hee-haw! Zhao Xiong shouted. The lance he held rotated, drawing a circle in the air. He dashed towards Yunshi. This was it, this was the feeling. The feeling that, though his strength and attacks held the advantage, his heart still beat heavily. Kid, try your best. Let's start a jolly and hearty fight. 1-on-1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yunshi took a few nimble steps, shielding the heavy lance arc by using his sword. Then, he showed his back to General Zhao Xiong, exposing his weakness on purpose. At the moment Yunshi showed him his back, General Zhao Xiong's eyes suddenly turned red. His steel lance rotated like a drilling bit, starting his fatal violent lunge toward Yunshi. Here it is, 5, 6, Yunshi rolled over, which almost was at the extreme limit of the human body, and then jumped up on the edge of the bridge. Boom! General Zhao Xiong's lance furiously broke through the balustrade of the bridge. Then, he dropped down into the green water under the bridge without hesitation. Plop! With a loud noise, the water splashed 10 meters high. After about dozens of seconds, a ball of green soul of the stone soldier flew to Yunshi. So that's true. Yunshi stood on the position General Zhao Xiong dashed down from on the bridge, looking at the traces caused by the severe friction. For a moment, he was stunned. The 5 tiger generals were the successors of military strategists. They were experts in charging and breaking enemy positions by using their skilled lance skills, and they had a strong compulsion to attack when their opponents exposed their weakness. He could defeat them by using this tactic, making them have an error in judgment. This was the tactic Yunshi learned from Huahua's seed. It seemed that, though Huahua's sword had beat them down, they still couldn't remove this weakness of theirs, their compulsion to attack a perceived weakness. I see. So, Yunshi understood how to win against the 5 generals. They were too impetuous and especially had an unintelligible compulsion to attack weaknesses. He picked up the wooden shield, bravely walking towards the area where the remaining 4 generals guarded. Plop! 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 Chapter 49, Mighty Dragon, How Can It Be So Simple? By using the same method, Yunshi trapped Xiao Ming, Xiao Xiong, Xiao Chu, Xiao Chue, and Xiao Shen beside the bridge. He felt the number of the souls he absorbed and felt pretty confused. Weren't they 5 real 3rd-rank warriors? Compared to the stone army he met at the first stage, why were the famous 5 tiger generals so easy to deal with? Were they too weak? No. Their attacking power and explosive force were both at the 3rd rank. If they fought recklessly with Yunshi one-on-one, they could even suppress Yunshi from all directions. If it wasn't because they had the same fatal weakness, Yunshi would have had to pay a great price to win against any of them. Maybe he would even have had to perish together with them. Huahua, what a genius you are! Every time Yunshi thought that he had overestimated Huahua's talent. Huahua's seed would tell him that he was at a way lower level than Huahua. When Huahua was still at the 2nd rank, the 5 tiger generals' actions were full of weak points. Though they were at the 3rd rank, they were still merely 5 stronger boorish fellows in Huahua's mind. However, in the eyes of the townspeople, even in the eyes of the people of White Lotus Sword Domain, they all were invincible generals. 99% perspiration was more important than 1% inspiration. That was just a story adults used to cheat children. 1% inspiration was way more important than 99% perspiration. People who had no inspiration would finally reach their limit. In this world, only a genius who also practiced hard could reach the zenith, just like Huahua. Does Huahua really need my help? Feeling the increased strength in his body, Yunshi figured out the degree in which he had improved. The souls of the 5 tiger generals were about 2 times more than the soul of the green hippo. What a great example the green hippo was. He decided that if he saw these kind of green hippos again, he would kill them as much as possible. Boom! A volcano erupted in front of Yunshi. Countless amounts of magma soared to the sky. For a moment, the dust and smoke rose from the volcanic vent and flew 10,000s of meters in the sky. Observing it from the ground, a small half of the sky was almost covered. Huahua, what are you fighting with? Looking at the exploding volcano, Yunshi was stunned for a long while. By using quicksilver motion, Yunshi turned into the wind, dashing to the central part of the burning volcano area. Along the way, Yunshi saw many bodies in separated parts. Every corpse was a strange beast, the beasts the people who just reached the small town owned. There were about 6 dead green hippos. About 6 dead white flying horses. A dead griffin. A dead King Kong. They all were giants or strange beasts. They were treasures belonging to the people in the town, some of them handed down by their owners' ancestors. Many strange beasts could live very long, way longer than humans. Training a baby beast from birth, by the time of its death, it could have even protected a family for dozen generations. In that case, how many strange beasts a big family had and how powerful their strange beasts were, directly showed how strong that family was. Ordinary people didn't have enough money and time to feed these fierce and strong beasts. However, those powerful strange beasts were all lying down in a pool of their own blood. Especially the several green hippos, Yunshi gazed at them with greed. Because they weren't killed by Yunshi, he obtained no souls from their corpses. He had to look at these carcasses messed up on the ground. Not one of them was alive. It seemed that, when Yunshi was struggling hard to fight with the stone soldier army, Hua had cleared her way by entering the last battle. Yunshi even doubted himself, when he reached that place, would the side quest have already been completed by Hua? Erf! A heaven-shaking roar told Yunshi that the last battle hadn't finished yet. Side quest, the heroine challenging the evil dragon. Go find her and become her partner, defeat the evil dragon. After remembering the hint of the side quest, Yunshi knew what the strongest monster in the volcano area was. A dragon. No matter where you were, the Western God's domain or Dragon's domain, a dragon meant absolute power, the master of dominant power. Dragon, even a worm, which had only a few drops of dragon blood, was the top hunter who stood at the peak of the food chain. As the side quest specially pointed out that it was an evil dragon, Yunshi couldn't imagine what kind of a vicious monster it was. Was Hua fighting with such a monster? After dodging balls of flame continuously and stepping on fire and dust, Yunshi finally reached the central location of the volcano area, and saw two presences who were fighting. Dragon. It wasn't an earth dragon, wyvern, nor a Varas. It was a real male fiery dragon who had red-hot scales and was roaring. How was it possible that such a monster appeared near the small town? Wasn't it a nightmare which only inhabited volcanic areas? Male fiery dragon. It had terrible blood that could make it become a true giant dragon. It was a true dragon. It was about 18 meters in length, and its scales looked rough and crimson. You could vaguely see dark red striations on its wings. Even as he was still a few hundred meters away from it, he could feel its horrible atmosphere, which was known as dragon's dignity. A male fiery dragon. It was a real male fiery dragon. If male fiery dragons were immersed long enough in magma, it could evolve into a giant dragon who could control flames. Its wide wings, hard scales, and strong forelimbs all proved that it could tear any mortal in two pieces. No matter if it were the green hippo, the King Kong, or the white flying horse, they could not be compared to the fiery dragon who owned the blood of a fire-type giant dragon. The fiery dragon was a real hero-rank being. It was a super creature who could control flames and had dragon's dignity. However, what was it Yunshi saw now? The atrocious fiery dragon, who was so strong that it could swim in magma, had one of its wings cut off and only half of its tail remained. Its body was covered with scars. Hua, who was just at the third rank, had driven the giant monster into the last ditch. This wasn't something like a second rank fighting against a third rank, but a mortal doing serious damage to a hero rank monster. Chapter 50, Dragon Battle Maiden That Was Too Powerful. Yunshi blankly looked at the both sides that were fighting each other violently, feeling Hua's powerful talent again. No, it already couldn't be described as powerful. It was incredible. Everyone in every god's domain admitted that a mortal rank couldn't defeat a hero rank. Mortal's third rank of white leaf meant the limit of flesh and blood. Even inhuman monsters like the green hippo were still at this rank. Only hero rank of silver leaf were entitled to step in a higher realm. You could say that in essence, mortal rank creatures and hero rank creatures were already two different living beings. Taking the male fiery dragon and the green hippo as an example, an adult male fiery dragon could easily spit out flame at thousands of degrees and his dragon aura field could shock and awe all creatures under the third rank. If this kind of monsters appeared on the battlefield of mortals, it wasn't as simple as an invincible enemy, but a nightmare who was going to exterminate all living beings. Third rank and 4rd rank. Mortals and heroes. This was a natural chasm. Ding! The cold sword light pierced the air, chopping at the angry male fiery dragon again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yunshi exhausted his sight, finally barely seeing traces of Hua's sword clearly. It was the flying swallow sword, but way stronger than the common flying swallow sword. Yunshi had to force all his strength to use the flying swallow's six-fold attack, but any of Hua's casual attacks easily reached 14 slashes. Not only that, they were all forced on one limb, there was no deviation. Hong! The male fiery dragon trampled the ground. All its scales suddenly emitted light, and then, a wall of fire shot up to the sky. The human mortal body certainly couldn't master this kind of ability. Flame control was a proof that the male fiery dragon was at hero rank. However, the wall of fire couldn't even ignite the corner of Hua's clothes. Hua stepped forward. Comparing to her use of the skill Quicksilver Motion, Yunshi blushingly felt that he himself was nothing. A moment later, she appeared behind the male fiery dragon. This time, it was her 24 times continuous attacks that were at lightning speed, and the position she chopped on was the male fiery dragon's tail, which was already a little broken. Roar! The angry male fiery dragon used its ultimate skill, which could kill all creatures whose rank was lower than 3rd rank, Dragon's Roar. Terrible sound waves spread away. Even Yunshi, who was hundreds of meters away from there, was also involved in the skill. His eardrums nearly broke. Hua flexibly brandished her sword, drawing traces in the air in a way that Yunshi was unable to understand, cutting and splitting the male fiery dragon from all directions. Who? The dragon's roar, which was able to kill the 5 tiger generals at the same moment, just blew up a gust of wind, making her pretty horsetail flap in the air. After breaking the dragon's roar down, Hua took a backward step and then jumped up in the next second. Gaho! The male fiery dragon saw that Hua was jumping up, then its next actions made Yunshi feel inconceivable. Holding claws, protecting its eyes and head. Its body curled up with wings folded. Looked that it was very proficient. Hua jumped up. She dragged her simple long sword, stroking her fingertip on the blade of the sword. Then, she dropped a few blood drops down on the sharp blade, adding the light, long sword a few blood-red color. The next moment, with a flash, a line in the air appeared in front of Yunshi's eyes. The male fiery dragon roared sadly and shrilly as one of its wings was chopped off from the middle. It was Sky-Flying Sword. It was Yunshi's first time seeing Hua's strongest sword skill, God Sword skill, with his own eyes. Only this kind of sword skill could chop off the defiant male fiery dragon's wing with one hit. After all, if it was Yunshi, his attack couldn't do any harm to the dragon's scales. By analogy, half of the dragon's tail and its wing on the other side were also chopped off by Hua's God Sword skill. No wonder that it was Hua's strongest hidden sword skill. It could even chop off the hero-ranked dragon's wings and tail. However, after using this skill, Hua did not look happy at all. She didn't keep fighting with the male fiery dragon. Using her skill Quicksilver Motion continuously, she ran to a corner in the middle of the volcano area. Then, she took out a black stone to sharpen her sword. Her sword was turned, the weapon was lacking sharpness. When Yunshi fought with the green hippo, he was also facing this trouble, so he understood Hua's action immediately. The male fiery dragon scales were too hard. Even though Hua's sword was made of stainless steel, an excellent weapon from White Lotus Sword Palace, but it was still not good enough to cut through dragon scales. Perhaps that was the only reason that Hua hadn't killed the male fiery dragon yet. Her weapon wasn't sharp enough. If so, maybe. Yunshi checked his armory, finding a weapon which he regarded as a waste before. The standard two-handed sword of the Thunderbolt army in the Western Gods domain. Its weight 108 kilograms. It could be used as a siege weapon. Hua, use it. Yunshi took out the sword, which was too heavy for mortals, and threw it to Hua. Ah, little she, you're here. Hua Hua looked at Yun Shi in surprise and happiness. She hurriedly stood up, tidying her little burnt dress. Because she had fought with the male fiery dragon for a long while, her clothes had been burnt a little apart. However, none of the parts were burned by the male fiery dragon's flames. It was burned due to the igneous magma. Don't look at me. Little she, ah. After realizing how embarrassing her dress was, Hua Hua's face turned red. You stupid dragon, it's all your fault. Gaho. The male fiery dragon didn't think so. It was just staying in the volcano, but Hua Hua came to it, chopping off its wings and tail. The male fiery dragon stared at them with tears welled up. Did I bother you? I just ate several humans, why must you chase after me till my nest? Hua Hua, sword. Yunshi never saw Hua Hua use two-handed swords, but he thought that Hua Hua should know how to use it. Oh, you're coming to give me a weapon. Not bad, this dream. Hua Hua looked very happy to see the two-handed sword which Yunshi threw to the ground. I needed this kind of weapon. In that case, this stupid dragon is just dead meat. Woho. Though it didn't understand what Hua Hua was saying, the male fiery dragon still noticed the two-handed sword that Yunshi threw to Hua Hua. Suddenly, it shivered. The next moment, Yunshi saw the 3 steps that Hua Hua used to kill the male fiery dragon. The first step, Hua Hua moved to the heavy sword, picking it up by using only one hand. The second step, Hua Hua jumped up. The blood that slipped from her fingers stained the heavy sword, which was able to kill the dragon. The third step, a giant V crack appeared in the air. It tore the male fiery dragon into 2 pieces. That was how the heroine killed the evil dragon. Chapter 51, Sky Sword, Tianxiang Sword, Hong. The male fiery dragon's mountain-like huge body toppled down on the ground. Its 4 limbs twisted and struggled and its dragon's roar shook the earth. Yunshi was caught off guard. The afterwind of the dragon's roar blew him to the sky. How dare you! At first, Hua Hua was going to kill the male fiery dragon without pain, but now, her anger flared up. The two-handed sword, which was made by the Thunder Army in the Western God's domain, was stained with Hua Hua's blood again. 1 hit, 2 hits. Yunshi hadn't landed on the ground but saw one sword light after another take off towards the male fiery dragon. Every sword light was as nimble as a bird flying in the sky. Every sword light was as heavy as a meteorite hitting the ground. Extremely heavy and extremely light. 2 different properties perfectly blended together on Hua Hua's sword. Breaking its claws, docking its tail, chopping its wings, cutting its bones and mincing its flesh. When faced with Hua Hua's godlike sword skill, the male fiery dragon, who arrogantly detonated the volcano, was meat on a chopping board. He was completely minced. Swish! As the last action, Hua Hua threw the two-handed sword to the sky, then continuously used quicksilver motion for 3 times, which was so fast that you may wonder if her ankles would break. She rushed below Yunshi, then leaped up, holding Yunshi in her arms in the air. A perfect pose of hero saving the princess. However, Yunshi wasn't the hero. He was the princess who was saved. Chi! The two-handed sword dropped down, directly sticking the male fiery dragon's head, pinning the scarred giant monster on the ground. The evil dragon was killed. Little she, don't come to such a dangerous place. I'm happy to take the sword you gave me, but this big one was a little too powerful for you. Though she said that, her face was full of happiness, even Yunshi could clearly see it. A little powerful. Yunshi dumbly looked at the male fiery dragon, who was sliced and diced but still giving off an appalling sense of pressure. It was a hero-rank monster, known as a nightmare who had the power to eliminate a whole army. Before today, he saw Hua using her god sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, beginner. Yunxi had made many guesses about what was the god sword skill. However, even his wildest guess was still pale and weak if compared to Hua's record of killing the male fiery dragon. The power of god sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, was way beyond Yunxi's understanding, and it was also beyond the common sense of the people of Sky Sword God's domain. As a third-rank sword maiden, she could kill the hero-rank male fiery dragon as easily as if it were an ant. That was how terrible and powerful the Sky Flying Sword was. Yunxi had never heard of such a sword skill. Jumping down from Hua's arms, Yunxi walked to the male fiery dragon's corpse, which still retained the temperature of the flames. He aimed at the area where the defense was most weak, the connection part between the wing and body. 9 sword lights burst out together, which meant that Yunxi had completely mastered the strongest skill from Hua's seed, Flying Swallow Sword. Hiss! Though the newbie iron sword had been enhanced for 3 times, it only made a screeching sound on the male fiery dragon's patagium, and only made several light scratches on it. After a few seconds, the scratches also disappeared. What? After trying it himself, Yunxi really understood how terrible a hero-rank being could be. It was the weakest part of the dragon. Besides, after being killed by Hua, the male fiery dragon's corpse had lost the support from its blood and energy. If the male fiery dragon was still alive, and had its blood and energy as support, even if Yunxi attacked it all day, he probably couldn't deal any damage to it. Yunxi's ultimate attack could hurt a third-rank swordsman, but couldn't even damage the male fiery dragon's weakest spot. That was the difference between the mortal rank and the hero rank. When faced with a monster like the male fiery dragon, mortals, even if it was an army of 100,000, were just a number. As the being who had hero rank power, it could kill mortals as though it was crushing ants. Hua, you're too strong. The more he knew Hua, the more Yunxi found how unusual his childhood sweetheart was. She couldn't belong to this common small town. As a girl who knew how to use the god sword skill, Sky Flying Sword, she could even ignore the difference between the hero rank and the mortal rank to kill the male fiery dragon. If this was a story from the Western God's domain, she definitely had the talent as a hero. That was not much. As hearing Yunxi's praise, Hua blushed, seeming a little sheepish. It was just a male fiery dragon. If it was a female fiery dragon, it would be big trouble. However, the male fiery dragon was moving alone, it shouldn't have a spouse. So, I used it to practice my sword skill after I found it, I knew. You were so brilliant like the stars or the wide ocean. Your smile was so bright, just like the sun. You were my most excellent childhood sweetheart. Yunxi raised his head up, gazing at Hua. Always, he knew that Hua was a genius, a sword genius who was far better than all the people in the town. Now, he would correct it. Hua wasn't only a genius on sword skill. She was also a genius on battles. With the passage of time, she would naturally emit more bright light, leaving every contemporary behind her. Yunxi, thank you. Comparing to her behavior when she was killing the male fiery dragon, under Yunxi's gaze, Hua looked pretty rattled. Yunxi saw her unladylike behavior. But she had no choice. Though it was just a male fiery dragon, but her weapon was too subpar. In order to kill it, she had to use the Sky Flying Sword. Would Yunxi think that she was too violent? Because, in the past, she always left him the expression as a cheerful and lively sword girl. However, she broke the male fiery dragon's claws, head, wings, and tail, and finally sliced and minced it. It did make her a little unlike a lady. Oh, that was all the stupid dragon's fault. Hua pouted, kicking on the male fiery dragon's head, though it had already totally died. Yunxi looked at his childhood sweetheart, with many ideas passing in his heart. Yunxi, Huahua lowered her head and peeped at Yunxi. For a moment, two people fell into a weird silence. Until Yunxi heard the ethereal and antique voice of stars suddenly appearing beside his ears. Side quest completed. Please receive your reward. Then, a transparent line, which Yunxi looked pretty familiar with, suddenly appeared between Huahua and himself, linking the two people together. Inside of Yunxi's body, Huahua's seed started to grow fast again. Not only so, the completion degree of Huahua's seed started to drop sharply. 31%, 27%, 15%. As Yunxi looked at it incredulously, the completion degree of Huahua's seed dropped to 1%. Chapter 52. Huahua joins the team. It wasn't because the skills Yunxi obtained from Huahua were decreasing. Quite the opposite, there was more information flowing from Huahua to Yunxi's body, expanding the limit of the seed. Quicksilver motion, perfect. Flying swallow sword, perfect. Sky flying sword, beginner 10% done. When he obtained the seed from Huahua, the information about this part were all hidden in mist, but now, they all opened to Yunxi. After stepping into the second rank and finishing the side quest, helped the girl defeat the evil dragon, not only did the closeness degree between Yunxi and Huahua increase, but it also let him obtain more benefits from Huahua. As the completion degree of the seed dropped from 33% to 1%, that also meant that the information Yunxi obtained from Huahua was increasing to a new realm. Even the sky-flying sword, which Huahua used to kill the male fiery dragon, also showed its truths to Yunxi for the first time. Though it had only been analyzed by less than 10%, but as a terrible god sword skill, it had opened a door leading to a new realm for Yunxi. This time, the seed expanded 10 times. The most data was about god sword skill, which Yunxi greatly desired and was also the most important part. Quicksilver motion, perfect, and flying swallow sword, perfect, were the precondition to study sky flying sword. As long as Yunxi followed the steps recorded in Huahua's seed, to practice the two secret skills to their limits, he would touch the door leading to god sword skill. Yunxi even saw a mark in Huahua's seed, which he never saw before. It was an area which Yunxi couldn't understand now. Huahua, who the hell are you? After the seed updated its data, Yunxi felt that his childhood sweetheart became more and more mysterious. She was like an inexhaustible treasury. Every time he learned something new from the seed, he would then find that more unknown knowledge was hiding in the original seed. If Yunxi didn't have high affinity with the original seed, he would probably never guess what wonderful talent and sword skill his childhood sweetheart owned. Perhaps choosing her seed in the newbie trial was the best choice Yunxi had made. Yunxi, is there anything on my face? As Huahua curiously looked at Yunxi, she didn't know that Yunxi had found her secret. As a god sword skill, sky flying sword wasn't a skill that everyone could see through. It was a topmost legacy from a faraway god's domain, even better than the twin witches' legacy. Of course, the twin witches also had phenomenal talent. They were already beyond the White Lotus Sword domain's witches' legacy. Even in the Western gods' domains, they were still very famous. No. Huahua, we meet again. Yunxi pretended that he knew nothing. How could he tell her the truth? He couldn't tell her that he had her seed and had seen a lot of secrets from it. If things kept going on like this, would the seed forever link Huahua and me together? No matter how long the distance between us was, would we always share this special relationship? The stars, what is in your mind? Wasn't the seed system too strange? If the seed's completion degree went to 100%, what would happen? Great. Tonight's dream is really a good dream. It's too lucky to meet a monster who could be used to practice my skills on. Besides, Yunshi was slaying the dragon together with me. Hua Hua smiled so much that her eyes almost narrowed shut, as her horsetail swung in the air. However, little she, this is just a dream. In the real world, I won't be so violent to cut the dragon into pieces. And I'm only good at using flying swallow sword. Yunshi looked on weirdly seeing his childhood sweetheart's nonsense. Well, if I didn't have your seed, I would think flying swallow sword was your strongest sword skill. After all, it was the flying swallow sword which she used to defeat the 5 tiger generals. However, if compared to the terrible sky flying swallow sword was just like a feeble small bird. Besides, why were you so skilled when you used the 2-handed sword? The beheading skill could even cut the dragon into 2 pieces. It was really way too powerful. Little she, you don't like a strong girl. Hua Hua vaguely felt that something was wrong. She asked her childhood sweetheart carefully. No. I like the way you are. The Hua Hua who can use flying swallow sword and the Hua Hua who can slay the dragon, they both are my Hua Hua. Looking at Hua Hua, who seemed a little restless, sincere words naturally came out from Yunshi's mouth. Yay! Great! This dream is great! Hua Hua put her palms together devoutly and yelled with excitement. Ah, yes! Hua Hua was always lively and confident. She is my childhood sweetheart and my first love. Looking at the cheerful Hua Hua, Yunshi smiled faintly. However, he didn't know why, but a girl with white witch uniform suddenly appeared in his heart. Yes, the trial was still going on. He should continue fighting. The side quest of the girl fighting against the evil dragon had been completed. Hua Hua's favorability had been increased and Hua Hua's seed had also been updated. The next, he should go challenge the ultimate goal. Save the princess from the giant tower. That was the ultimate goal of his formal trial. Hua Hua, goodbye. As waving his hand to Hua Hua, Yunshi was ready to step on the new battlefield. Hey, little she, where are you going? Hua Hua came after him. Wait, why didn't Hua Hua disappear? Yunshi inanely looked at his childhood sweetheart walking toward him. The side quest had been completed, and he had also obtained the reward. Shouldn't Hua Hua return to the real world? Just like what happened at the end of the last trial. No, there was something different this time. Quickly, Yunshi realized the difference. Last time, in the newbie trial, he completed the ultimate goal before Hua Hua caught him. He perfectly finished the trial, letting Hua Hua return to the real world and treat the whole event as a dream. Now, Hua Hua was just a part of the side quest. After defeating the male fiery dragon, she didn't disappear, because Yunshi hadn't completed the ultimate goal of the trial. In other words, he had to challenge the ultimate goal together with his childhood sweetheart. Well. He was glad to know that Hua Hua would team up with him since she could be really helpful. However, Yunshi had a strong sense of foreboding. What? Yunshi, you will go to challenge enemies to practice your sword skill. Tell me, who dared to hurt you? I will kill them all. Don't be shy. No matter who they are, as long as they dare to hurt my little she, they can only die. My blade is yours. Chapter 53, The Third District in the Formal Trial. In front of the Third District, Yunshi was standing together with Hua Hua aside the flaming bonfire. Here was the only way to the tall tower. Not far away, there were dozens of third-rank people scattered on the huge bridge. Looking into the distance, on the square below their ultimate goal, the tall tower, there were 3 red stone soldiers standing amongst a group of top-level stone soldiers. Obviously, they were Yunshi's last enemies before he entered the Great Tower. Yunshi had even guessed out the identity of the 3 red stone soldiers. In the small town, except Hua Hua, the twin witches, the strange beasts and the male fiery dragon, everyone knew who the strongest three people were. They were from the noblest families of the White Lotus Sword domain, they receiving the best education since their childhood, having best weapons and talent. In a word, they were the hottest three people in this exam of the Sword Palace. Child Yun He, Child Xin Yen, and Child San Quan. Is that all? After seeing the stone soldiers on the bridge and square, Hua Hua dragged the two-handed sword as her toes lightly touched the ground. Swish! With a flash of her sword, Hua Hua didn't give Yunxi the chance to say anything, she killed all the third-rank enemies on the bridge. As some of the mortal rank's strongest people, they all were not inferior to the 5 tiger generals. Many of them were servants of noble families, a few of them were even famous masters of noble families. However, they couldn't even hold for 1 second when facing Hua Hua. Instant kill, and instant kill. Like cutting grass, Hua Hua killed all the so-called strong people instantaneously. Wait, Hua Hua. When Yunxi reacted, Hua Hua had already stepped in the last square. No kidding. If he let Hua Hua kill them all, he wouldn't obtain a piece of their souls, like the dragon scales. That was the answer Yunxi got from the volcano zone. This trial was a battlefield the stars prepared for him, not for Hua Hua, who was at 3rd rank, but could actually kill the hero rank male fiery dragon. So, even if he had to borrow Hua Hua's power, that wouldn't happen before he had to face an unbeatable enemy, which would probably appear in his ultimate goal, the Great Tower. As for the enemies who were under the hero rank, no matter how strong they were, Hua Hua could kill them all in an instant. So, he decided to kill them by himself. With the aid of an external force, perhaps he could sweep away all the enemies in this zone quite simply, but that did no help to increase his personal ability. Tut, what a troublesome rule. After knowing of Yunxi's trial, Hua Hua felt a little aggrieved and pouted her small mouth. In her mind, they were just some wastes that she could kill by the tens with one brandish of her sword. But her little she still had to strenuously beat them down one by one, that was too weird. I will borrow your power at the last moment. Let's fight together by that time. After advising her earnestly, finally Yunxi stopped Hua Hua from her desire to kill all the enemies at once. To Hua Hua, the trial in the 3rd district was nothing but an extremely easy mode. She could even clean the district with her eyes closed. However, to Yunxi, this was a bloody trial which needed him to challenge his limit, understanding the true wisdom by wandering between life and death. Here we go. Though it was a death trial, but as Hua Hua followed and looked at him, Yunxi felt that his spirit was strangely high. Showing his growth to his girl, his childhood sweetheart, his first love, that made him pretty joyful. Inside of his body, it seemed that Hua Hua's seed also felt his happiness and Hua Hua's sincerity, it started to grow sturdily. Kid, go die. On the square, at the moment the top-level stone soldiers found Yunxi, they yelled and rushed at him together. The difficulty had increased. That was Yunxi's personal feeling. Even in the 1st district, the stone soldiers rushed forward together to attack him, but their rank wasn't higher than 2nd rank. And in the volcano district, the 5 generals were challenging him one by one. If he didn't learn their weakness from Hua Hua's seed, he couldn't easily entice them to fall into the water and get drowned to death. Now, these 3rd-rank stone soldiers started to group together again to fight. However, something had been changed. After completing the side quest of the girl fight against the evil dragon, and updating his seed from Hua Hua, though Yunxi's body didn't become super strong, and the souls of the 5 tiger generals weren't more than 2 green hippos worth of souls. However, his combat intuition, talent, and his use of quicksilver motion, middle level, and flying swallow sword, middle level, had been improving rapidly. After experiencing the bloody killing in the 1st district and seeing Hua Hua's godlike sky-flying sword, Yunxi knew better than anyone what a wide gap was between Hua Hua and himself. he also had a strong desire to become stronger. You are nothing more than this. His enemies were at 3rd rank. So what? They were more experienced on fighting. So what? I can't kill you all as easy as Hua, but you also can't beat me down with ease. As he used quicksilver motion, his ankles made slightly ominous sounds. That meant that he had reached the limit of his body and had reached the limit of a mortal. Hovering the flying swallow sword in the air. He didn't use the stronger skill, flashing 9 sword lights, but used the most simple and elegant skill, the original flying swallow triple attack. However, this time, the flying swallow sword was being used when he was surrounded by 4 3rd-rank strong people and dozens of other people. His actions were perfect. His breathing didn't change. His heart was strongly beating in his body, but his mood was unexpectedly calm. Peace of mind. Enhance your background. Drawing out his sword. Swish. A 3rd-rank stone soldier, who tried to be the first to attack Yunshi, looked at Yunshi in disbelief. The next moment, his head slipped down to the ground, spurting vast amounts of blood in the air. For the first time, Yunshi did it. He didn't use any trick, but defeated a 3rd-rank strong person face to face, in an unfriendly environment that was surrounded by tens of enemies. The gap between 2 mortals had a limit, that was what Yunshi learned from Hua's seed. Even a monster who was strong like the green hippo could be hurt by a firewood chopper. Strong men like the 5 tiger generals could also be drowned in the sea. When confronted with sword and blade, everyone in the mortal rank would get hurt. They couldn't ignore a mortal's attack like what the hero rank male fiery dragon did. Mortal rank meant flesh and blood. You would shed blood if you were cut by a sword, and you would die if your head was cut off. What was the difference between 1st-rank people and 3rd-rank people? The difference was that, when faced with a knife, one was a piece of paper and another one was a stack of papers. You are not unbeatable. Yunshi stepped back and dodged a series of slashes. Then he struck back, cutting off an arm from a 3rd-rank person. Blood sprayed on the blade, reflecting his resolute eyes. Chapter 54. Irresistible force. Brandish his sword, draw back his sword, kick away the enemies. As if he was a swallow flying in the sky, Yunshi flew amongst a group of well-armed burly men. By using his evolved quicksilver motion and flying swallow sword, he dealt with the crowd like a fish in water. 1, 2, 3. 3 had successively slipped off to the ground, spurting blood in the sky. For the first time he assaulted the 3rd district, Yunshi had killed 3 3rd-rank enemies and cut off 2 people's arms. He got a really fruitful result. The trial wouldn't become easy due to his improvement. When Yunshi showed his strongest state to fight against these 3rd-rank stone soldiers, an accident happened. An arrow was shot at him from a distance, flying through the crowd and cutting through one of Yunshi's hand, the hand he used to hold his sword. Win or loss, the battle between masters often ended in a flash. Not to mention that the trial Yunshi had to face was so cruel. That was a 3rd-rank archer. Yunshi felt a little surprised as he looked at the archer in red, standing alone at the end of the bridge. In the next second, his eyes filled with blood. Arf! My little she. After seeing Yunshi being hacked to death by the crowd, Hua's eyes turned red. Even after Yunshi had told her that, as long as the bonfire was still burning, he could revive from it, so she didn't need to care much about his death. However, after seeing her childhood sweetheart miserably dying in front of her, how could she bear it? How was it possible to bear it? Hua would never bear it. You wastes, how dare you to do this to my little she? You all, go to hell. Drawing her 2-handed heavy sword, Hua turned into a terrible shadowy figure again. That definitely wasn't something that any other 3rd-rank human could do. One brandish, 2 pieces. The two-handed sword could even be used to collapse a city gate. But now, it turned into a light of killing, cutting all the third-rank stone soldiers on the bridge in half. As for the archer in red, who gave Yunshi a critical shot, he was the priority target Hua Hua paid attention to. The archer was sliced and diced by her. That only took her 3 seconds. And you, go die. After coming through the bridge by killing, Hua Hua aimed at the last 3 red stone soldiers of the 3rd district. Go! Watch out! Who is this monster? Child Yun He, Child Xin Yan, and Child San Quan entered the battle. 3 seconds later, Hua Hua dragged her two-handed heavy sword, peevishly walking back to the bonfire. Behind her was a sea of corpses and blood. 10 seconds later, as usual, he revived beside the bonfire. Then, he speechlessly looked at the sea of green souls as they slowly rebuilt their bodies. Hua Hua, what did you do to them? Why did they all die? It seemed that if he stayed together with Hua Hua, the enemies who were killed by her would also become green souls. However, Hua Hua couldn't absorb these green souls, neither could he. So, these green souls would revive again and turn back to their original bodies. As Yunshi was ready to challenge the cruel 3rd district again, Hua Hua stretched out her hand. Little Shi, don't keep doing it. Don't keep doing what? Yunshi quizzically looked at his childhood sweetheart. He knew he had used all the power from Hua Hua's seed. You're imitating me, but we're different. Hua Hua seriously gazed at Yunshi. Though in the dream Yunshi was so cool and excellent, and she was glad to see it, but a defect was a defect. She must tell it to him. Different. Yunshi also slightly realized that the world in Hua Hua's eyes was different from the world in his eyes. He couldn't say the details. However, after Hua Hua pointed it out, he had realized this problem, which was ignored by him all this time. Your arm length, body height, and physique are all different from mine. Flying Swallow Sword isn't a big problem for you, because you have enough flexibility and dexterity. The problem is the Quicksilver motion. Hua Hua lowered her body and held Yunshi's foot, carefully observing the bones and shape of his foot, then took off his shoes. Because Yunshi just finished ectasis not long ago, his skin was abnormally white, not looking like a boy's feet. Because his ectasis was evolving according to Hua Hua's seed, so the flexibility and dexterity of his body were unconsciously biased toward Hua Hua. However, feet were the limbs that humans used the most, and was also the most sophisticated body parts that muscles developed very well. 16 years of experience remained Yunshi a deep impression, which caused a little incongruity. Well, as I thought, here is untrained. Little Shi, Quicksilver motion does a huge burden to the feet. Your feet still can't withstand the explosive force of Quicksilver motion. Hua Hua rubbed Yunshi's feet and told him the matter needing attention. Ah, so that's the reason. Yunshi finally understood what the incongruity he felt was. That was true. Just like what Hua Hua said, when he used Quicksilver motion to the limit, his ankles would give bad cries. That was the telltale sign of overexertion. To other third-rank people, it was already enough if their speed could be as fast as the middle-level Quicksilver motion. However, Yunshi's flaw was too big in Hua Hua's eyes. Just now, the archer in red aimed at the position you were going to go. You had forced yourself to reach the limit, so you were no longer able to make any change to your trajectory. So that meant you couldn't dodge the arrow. Besides, you pay too much attention to close combat, and you don't have the experience to deal with ranged attacks. I can teach you. Hua Hua's soft words made her Yunshi's first and best battle tutor. Finally, Yunshi understood how many ridiculous mistakes he made in his seemingly satisfactory performance. Oh, certainly, people were not the same. The wandering green souls revived in the 3rd district one by one, waiting for Yunshi's challenge. Then, I'm going. Holding the newbie iron sword in his, for the second time, Yunshi walked to the cruel third district. After drawing a lesson from his first try, this time, he didn't rashly force his body to reach the limit, but saved his strength in order to use quicksilver motion at any time. As he dodged the attacks from dozens of third-strong people, he also kept seeking the best timing to attack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As Yunshi killed the 10th person, the archer in red finally found his weak point by using intuition, and killed him in one shot. This archer is not simple. Looking at the black arrow cutting through his heart, Yunshi murmured and fell to the ground. Arf! My little she. Seeing her childhood sweetheart's death with her own eyes, Hua got mad again. 10 seconds later, after Yunshi revived beside the bonfire, he saw a lot of green souls floating above a sea of blood again. Chapter 55, title at end, Chi. Yunshi took an arrow in the knee. Chi. Yunshi took an arrow in the shoulder. Chi. Yunshi took an arrow in the head. There wasn't any exception. Every time Yunshi got shot by the archer in red, he would be chopped by all sorts of weapons in the next second. In this battle of mortal ranks, such an archer who could fire at the target 100 times without a single miss was surely the deadliest killer. Yunshi proved that by dying 30 times. Hua also left Yunshi's enemies with a nightmare forever by her 30 massacres. Again, Yunshi revived beside the bonfire. As he was ready to rush to the stone soldiers and fight with them, Hua grabbed his hand. This can't go on, little she. Right now, you can't defeat the archer. If you don't make yourself stronger, even if you overdraw your limit, you can't walk through the bridge. Yunshi paused for a while, then he relaxed his body and sat on the ground. Yes, Hua was right. Now, even if he used his second-rank power and Hua's third-rank combat intuition to the limit, he still couldn't pass through the bridge. After all, he wasn't Hua. For the first time, Yunshi clearly felt his limit. 1, 2, 3. Even the third-rank stone soldiers on the bridge attacked him together. If he paid the price of dying hundreds of times, he probably still couldn't pass through the bridge, even if meant that he had to die for many more times. However, the archer in red was out of his expectations. Yunshi didn't know who the mysterious archer was. No matter how perfectly he used his second-rank quicksilver motion, the archer could still find his weak point among the crowd and give him a critical shot. The archer didn't even need to hit the arrow at his crucial point. In fact, Yunshi was only directly killed by the arrow very few times. The archer's goal was to break Yunshi's rhythm. Yunshi's quicksilver motion looked like floating clouds and flowing water, but that was built on his strong pre-assessment. When faced with a dozen third-rank masters, every second he slightly stayed at the same place would lead to a dead end. What an awesome archer! But the archer's battle style doesn't look like it's from the White Lotus Sword domain. Sitting by the bonfire, Yunshi observed the white-haired young person, who carried a two-handed longbow behind the back and wore red clothes. I tried not to show the archer's gender because that was a she. White Lotus Sword domain was a lower domain of Sky Sword domain. Most of the people there practiced sword skills. If there was such an archer that mastered such a terrible archery, he should already be as famous as the 5 tiger generals. He should be a stealth archer who majors in the long bow, and his close combat power is also good. Look, he wears 2 swords at the waist. Those 2 aren't ornaments, but true lethal weapons. Hua pointed at the archer in red, the person who caused his 30 failures. He should have a locking skill like the mind's eye, and he should also have the eagle eye. If I'm not wrong, he should have found his way to hero rank. Maybe he is a little weaker than the last 3 guys, but his potential is far beyond them. If he had a spirit weapon rank bow, he can cause 3 times the threat. Fortunately, his weapon is just a so-so. After Hua pointed out the mysterious archer's talents one by one, Yunshi finally understood what kind of an opponent he was facing. If even Hua also praised the archer, that meant that he was way better than the 5 tiger generals. The archer was very likely to reach hero rank in the future. No wonder he looked unlike the other stone soldiers. His red clothes and white hair made him look like a crane standing among chickens. However, he still wanted to win. No matter what he faced, he must pass the trial and become stronger. For Yunshi, it was very rare to have such an impulse. Compared to this, his ultimate goal of saving the princess wasn't that important. The more hard it was to get, the more eager one was to get it. Perhaps that was the commonality of all humans. Hua, have you got any strategy? Holding his newbie iron sword, Yunshi was ready to fight again. No. Hua carefully counted the gap between him and the stone soldiers, then shook her head. Though Yunshi had exerted his talents to the fullest, but that was still too early for him to challenge a trial at this level. It wasn't good to die so many times. She still felt love dearly. So, I can't. Even Yunshi had guessed this answer already, but when he heard it coming from Hua's mouth, he still felt frustrated. No. Even if the answer is no, I still can't give up. He couldn't retreat. Compared with the apostle candidates or true apostles he might encounter later on, this wasn't harsh at all. Why did the stars create this trial world? That was for tempering his will and improve his strength step by step. There were just a dozen third-rank people and a mysterious archer. Would they make him give up? He would never give up. I want to win. So, sorry, Hua. I will do something to you. Can you forgive me? After thinking it over and over again, Yunshi only got one idea in his mind. The stars, forgive me. This was the only strategy that my simple brain could imagine. Yes. I forgive you, little she. Hua curiously looked at Yunshi. Was he willing to let her help him pass the trial? In fact, the trial really pissed her off. She couldn't bear the trial because it forced her little she to die, again and again. Then, close your eyes, Hua. Yunshi stealthily walked up to Hua with a red face. Gee, little she, what do you want to do? No. Looking at Yunshi's face getting closer and closer, Hua was in a dither. No, when did her little she become so daring? And why does he look so skillful? Whoa! As Hua cried out in alarm, Yunshi softly kissed Hua's lips. It wasn't their first kiss. In their childhood, he had secretly kissed her in their children's play. However, this time, it was different. Looking at Hua, Yunshi managed to muster up all his courage to take this step. You know, not long ago, his childhood sweetheart used a 2-handed sword to cut a male fiery dragon into pieces. To kiss such a Hua was like challenging the evil dragon. If Hua wasn't his childhood sweetheart, Yunshi wouldn't dare try it. Hua's lips were soft and sweet. They were still as warm as in Yunshi's memory. At the moment he kissed Hua's lips, Yunshi clearly felt that inside of his body, Hua's seed acted like a dry plant that suddenly got irrigated. It started to grow up at a ridiculous speed. 1%, 2%, 3%. Chapter 56, The Dawn of Victory, Hoo. Sitting beside the bonfire, Hua's little finger drew a circle on the ground round and round. My little she is corrupted. You were bullying me. Her beautiful cheeks all blushed to the root of her ears. If you looked carefully, you would find that in her dewy big eyes, there was excitement and agitation. Because the relationship between Yunxi and her had a rapid advance just now. To Hua Hua, it was a great advance. Unlike all their kisses in the past, this time, Yunxi's kiss had a special meaning. Ah, what a wonderful world. She decided to keep this dream firmly in her mind. She must kept it in her mind. She didn't want it to become fuzzy like the dream she dreamed last time. Ta! Among the big burly stone soldiers, Yunxi jumped up. However, his eyes kept gazing at the dangerous archer in red. Just as he expected, at the moment he jumped up, the white-haired archer in red shot an arrow at him. The arrow rotated like a black hound jumping in the air. If he got hit, it would definitely cut through his body. Now! Yunxi held the newbie iron sword horizontally in front of himself and blocked the bloody hound-like arrow in time, then jumped out of the encirclement. Flying Swallow six-fold attack. The nimble sword light flashed among the crowd. The sharp strengthened blade of the newbie iron sword cut off the third-rank enemies' heads one after another. This time, the speed of Flying Swallow's six-fold attack didn't reach the limit that Yunxi could reach. However, it was way more easy and smooth than any Flying Swallow's six-fold attack he used before. The connection between his two moves was near perfect. Chi! At the very moment Yunxi just finished his Flying Swallow's six-fold attack, the second sniper arrow was shot at him. This time, it was a lightning speed arrow, and was shot at him through the crowd. If Yunxi didn't kiss Hua Hua just now, he wouldn't be able to dodge this arrow. Ding! Still, at the critical moment, Yunxi's focus reached a new height. He blocked the arrow, and using the impacting force of the arrow, he used Quicksilver motion to step back, breaking away from the battle. Step back. This was what Hua Hua's seed taught Yunxi after its high-speed growth. Temporarily stepping back wasn't equal to escaping, but for the sake of accumulating stronger power for the following attack. It was extremely attractive to play one's power to the best and dancing the blade of battle. However, Yunxi wasn't Hua Hua. He wasn't able to do that. So, by combining it with his own characteristics, he decided to challenge his opponents and also grasp the dominant right in his own hands at the same time. That should be the best tactic. Now, after kissing Hua Hua, Yunxi finally grew to a degree that was able to do this. 3% growth degree. That not only improved Yunxi's physical fitness, but also made his understanding of battles reach a new level. For the first time, he tried to let Hua Hua's talent fit his body and change his battle style. In the past, he was too reliant on the power of Hua Hua's seed. It could even be called as superstition. He thought that, as long as he could play the power of the seed to the limit, he would never be defeated, till he met the terrible archer in red. He finally understood that Hua Hua and him were different. When Hua Hua was at the second rank, she could pass this through the bridge and no one could stop her. However, he couldn't. The thing he could do was different from Hua Hua. Admitting it made him understand Hua Hua's power much more and absorb the properties of Hua Hua's seed in the meanwhile. Hua Hua could turn into a flying sword to kill the giant dragon, to kill everything refusing to obey her. As for him, the thing he could do now was Flying Swallow. Triple attack. The sharp blade of sword flew in the air like a flying swallow. It shot down an arrow and cut off 3 high-level stone soldiers' arms at the same time. He didn't need to give them critical attacks every time. He just needed to cut down their battle power bit by bit. As long as he could control the rhythm of the battle, he could finally obtain victory. The kiss with Hua Hua was the kiss of the goddess of victory that could bring him the dawn of victory. Kala! Kala! In the face of Yunxi's sword, the last stone soldier's body also toppled down to the ground. A smile appeared on Yunxi's sweaty face. He did it. Now, in the entire 3rd district, there was only the last 3 red stone soldiers and the archer in red, who were standing at the end of the bridge. The archer in red didn't give Yunshi time to take a rest, but took the bow and adjusted the arrow, then shot to the sky. Come on! Yunshi rushed to the last enemies on the bridge. Cough! Bruised, Yunshi dragged his tired body to return to the bonfire. Little Shi. Hua lovingly looked at Yunshi. After walking through the bridge, Yunshi didn't step in the square immediately, but walked back to the bonfire. The last enemy, the archer in red, was more powerful than Yunshi's expectation. Double arrow, shattering arrow, spiraling arrow, and tracking arrow. Just in order to go to him, Yunshi's body had been covered with blood. The most desperate thing was that this guy's close combat ability wasn't any inferior than his archery. After sublimating Hua's seed, Yunshi still fought with him for over 100 turns, then finally beat him down by using his enhanced newbie iron sword. If it was said in a rude manner, perhaps among all the people Yunshi'd seen, the archer in red was a person who was only second to Hua. If Yunshi didn't have the enhanced Hua's seed, he was no match for him. The thing which finally determined the winner was the gap between their weapons. As Hua said, the archer's 2 swords were made up of stainless steel, but it was still inferior compared to Yunshi's newbie iron sword, which had been enhanced to its limit. After defeating the tough archer in red, Yunshi was exhausted. He had to return to the bonfire to take a rest. Plop! After walking back to the bonfire zone and feeling the warm fire again, Yunshi directly stumbled into Hua's arms. Yunshi was too tired. Though it was just a trial in a dream, but it still exhausted Yunshi's mind and spirit. He heard a familiar song around his ears. It was so soft and peaceful. Was it a cradle song? Had the battle finished? No, not yet. Yunshi opened his eyes, then saw his childhood sweetheart's smiling face, and heard her soft song. The position was right above himself. Little Shi, are you awake? Hua put Yunshi's head on her knees. She softly wiped Yunshi's forehead, gazing at him with her tender eyes. The trial's not finished. Laying on Hua's knees, Yunshi smiled at his childhood sweetheart with confidence. Sure enough, you were my goddess of victory, Hua. Chapter 57, The 3 Childs at the end of the coastline, standing in front of the great tower with ignited huge flames. Eventually, Yunshi came to the last opponents of this district. They were the noble geniuses from White Lotus Sword Domain or higher sword domains. Child Yunhe, Child Xinyan, and Child Sanquan. 3 people who had different temperaments. Child Yunhe was from Yunhe City. He carried the crane-winged twin swords on his back. They were twin swords, just like the swords the second child of Yunhe City, who had been defeated by Yunshi just now, owned. Unlike the 2 crane swords, the curve of crane-winged twin swords was more smooth. At the side of their blades, there were beautiful wing-like lines. They were true spirit weapons, famous as 2 swords that were handed down from generation to generation in Yunhe City. In the future, it had the possibility to become a lower-grade divine weapon or even a true divine weapon. If viewing from their weapons, Child Yunhe was the strongest one among the 3 people. Snakebone's soft sword was no match for the pair of crane-winged twin swords. Child Xinyan was from Xinyan City. He was over 2 meters tall, and had long and strong forelimbs. He used a blue-lit 2-handed sword. Judging from its scale, his 2-handed heavy sword looked a little like the standard 2-handed sword Hua used. However, it looked heavier and full of oppressiveness. Undoubtedly, it was a spirit weapon, a weapon belonged to the hero rank. The last person was Child Sanquan. He used a special sword, a fan sword. It looked like a fan, but it wasn't a fan. It looked like a sword, but it wasn't a sword neither. This special weapon was made up of 5 sharp blades, and every blade was engraved with weird runes and looked pretty mysterious. Apparently, it wasn't a simple attacking weapon. Associated with his identity of minoring and being swordsman, Taoist priest and alchemist at the same time, maybe this fan sword also had other secrets. The 3 people all inherited their nobility bloodlines, because they looked pretty handsome. Child Yun he looked pretty cultured. His appearance fitted the aesthetics of the people of Eastern domains. Child Si Nian's bloodline was from the Western gods' domain. His over 2 meters body height and long, strong forelimbs gave people a strong oppressive feeling. Child San Quan was from a high-level sword domain. He looked unlike a swordsman, but a little feminine. At this moment, faint red lights emitted out from their bodies, which pointed out their identity as the strongest people in this district. They had excellent bloodlines, received best educations, and owned the best equipments. They were the best children of nobility above all the people at the same age, and were generally rated as the top 3 people among all the candidates of the entrance examination of the Sword Palace. Not only the exam of the Sword Palace. Among all third-rank people, they were still on the top of the pyramid of power. People like the 5 tiger generals couldn't compare with them at all. Maybe the archer in red, who was so poor that couldn't buy a good equipment, was slightly better than them. However, his combat power was still slightly inferior. There you are. Child Yun he drew out the crane-winged twin swords from his back, looking at Yun Shi as fiercely as a tiger. We were waiting for you for a long time. Child Si Nian freed his hands and legs, he looked to be itching for a try. You've beat down one of us 4 kings. However, he is the weakest one among us. Don't think that we are as weak as him. Child San Quan shook his fingers. When he looked at Yun Shi, he behaved as if he were looking at a corpse. We're the 3 strongest people. I know. In common sense, you were the strongest third-rank people, geniuses above all geniuses. Yun Shi looked at the 3 people, who were chosen as his ultimate opponents on the way leading to the Great Tower. He also admitted this point. If he didn't have the STARS trial system for the Star Child, he wouldn't even be qualified to compare himself with these 3 people. They were high and mighty, and didn't even glance at mortals. Only the hero rank was their goal. From their births, they had the best cultivation conditions and received the best educations. They had left all ordinary people far away behind them from the beginning. These 3 people were the pride of the noble families of White Lotus Sword Domain. They were the seeds the noble families were going to send to the Sword Palace. After they grew up, they would naturally occupy a more discourse power in White Lotus Sword Domain, and help their families shore up their positions. Class wasn't a thing that could be seen through eyes, but it had already been engraved in every corner of society. In their eyes, as a baker, Yun Shi didn't even have the right to stand together with them. Say it, how do you want to be killed? Child Yun he stepped forward. As a super genius educated by his noble family, he had absolute confidence. Every time he used his crane-winged twin swords, they must savor the addictive taste of the blood of its enemy. Don't regard those so-called childs as some hothouse flowers. Since he inherited the name Child Yun He of this generation, that meant that he had really stepped in battlefield. You 4 kings are indeed very strong. Yun Shi held up his newbie wooden shield and rushed to Child Yun He without hesitation. Haha, you're brave. As a reward, I will send you to hell. Child Yun he laughed and threw the female sword of the crane-winged twin swords to the sky. The light female sword drew an elegant arc in the sky, spinning round and round, flying at Yun Shi along a trace that could never be thrown by a human. It looked like a flying crane wing, but also like a roaring dragon. This was the secret sword skill of Yun He City, a super sword skill that had been inherited from generation to generation. That was too fast. Yunshi forcefully stopped his quicksilver motion halfway. The next moment, a familiar scene happened. With a yell of rage, the hugest person of the three people jumped to the sky. As terrible as if a heavy mountain fell from the sky, he raised the two-handed heavy sword and chopped it toward Yunshi. Swifter, higher and stronger. Compared to the combined assault of the first stone soldier army, these two people's joint attack was perfect. No, the most dangerous person still hadn't attacked him yet. Where would he launch an attack? He. With a cold laugh, 3 sword blades suddenly appeared under Yunshi's feet, and woven into a metallic sword net in an instant. Was it some kind of Taoist art, or some kind of occult art of alchemy? Yunshi didn't even find what the method child Senquan attacked him was, as he lost his biggest advantage, the flexibility his quicksilver motion brought to him. If Yunshi didn't kiss Hua, he'd already be dead now. He first made a backflip, then threw out the wooden shield from his hand. He leaned to one side and jumped away. Boom! As if it was a meteorite falling down to the ground, a blue-lit heavy sword heavily hit on the position where Yunshi was standing at, and made a few meters wide crack on the ground. It was hard to believe that it was a damage that a mortal caused. Comparing to the high-level stone soldier of the first stone soldier army, perhaps the leap attack child Xin Yan used was 10 times stronger than it. No, they're not done yet. Swish! The fatal sound of a sword slicing through the air came at him. That was the sound of the crane-winged twin swords. Chapter 58, Dancing Crane Swords, Flying. After releasing the twin swords, Child Yunhe laughed loudly and smugly. The flying crane swords crossed each other, blocking all the routes Yunshi may escape his attack. Just like what Hua told him. Gazing at the twin swords locking his body, Yunshi's heart became quiet conversely. His mind had integrated into the nature. Even as he was in a most hostile environment, he didn't panic. This was a realm that many hero-ranked people couldn't reach. Little she, these 3 are wastes, but wastes are still different. Among the 3 people, the most threatening person for you isn't the strongest one, but the one who has the best weapon. So, in order to kill them all, you have to break their most powerful advantage first. After fighting with the 3 childs, Yunshi quickly understood that Hua was right. Child Xin Yan had the strongest strength and attack power. His attacks were bold, a little like the 5 tiger generals, and should be practiced on battlefields. Child Sanquan knew the most flexible tactics and most sinister attacking methods. His power obviously was the strongest among the 3 people. However, Child Yunhe was the strongest person. Because he had the crane-winged twin swords. After being used by the best geniuses of Yunhe's city from generation to generation, the pair of famous swords had special inside foundations and spirit chi. Well, I think I have to use that. After crossing the newbie iron sword in front of himself, Yunshi blocked the crossing attack of the crane-winged twin swords from the front. Ding! The crane-winged twin swords skillfully parried the newbie iron sword and cut through Yunshi's body. Right now, Yunshi used the secret skill which appeared in his mind after kissing Hua. Before the twin swords started stirring in Yunshi's body, it was stopped by a gust of colossal power of essence and blood. Instant refining. Blood-stained secret skill. Instantly, 10% of his blood was drawn out from his body and poured into the crane-winged twin swords. This was a power that mortals could have, but it was a secret skill that could only be used by hero ranks. It was a taboo skill. Yunshi didn't know where and how Hua learned it, but the self-damaging secret skill was the main reason he made the following tactic. Catching the crane-winged twin swords was the most important step of the tactic. What? Child Yunhe shivered, then unbelievably found that crane-winged twin swords lost contact with his blood and soul in an instant. It would be about 30 seconds. The secret skill he learned from Hua's seed was a taboo skill. It used his blood as sacrifice to obtain the right to control a powerful weapon temporarily. It seemed that this secret skill was invented for robbing an enemy's mighty weapon in the shortest time after losing the weapon on the battlefield. To a low-level weapon, he could obtain right of use by using the blood-stained secret skill once. However, Yunshi was trying to control a hero-ranked spirit weapon as a second-rank mortal. Even if he paid with 10% of his blood, he only obtained its right of use for 30 seconds. However, that was enough. Now, I will show you the true power of Hua's seed. Crane Wing Twin Swords, Twin Fly. Yunshi had never practiced the secret sword skill of Yunhe City, but after controlling the Crane Wing Twin Swords, Yunshi naturally understood how to use the pair of spirit weapons. No! Hurry back! No one could understand how terrible the Crane Wing Twin Swords were more than Child Yunhe. It was a lethal weapon above all mortal-ranked weapons. Don't panic. Child Si Nian held his blue sword with two hands, then centered on himself, using the terrible skill Bladestorm. Fool! The Crane Wing Twin Swords can fly. Child Yunhe shouted as he quickly ran away. Chi! The twin swords looked like two flying cranes, but also like two flying dragons. Under Yunshi's control, they cut through Child Si Nian's body from up to down. From his skull to his spine, from his censored body part to his throat, before Child Si Nian played any of his strengths, he had been killed by the swords. Damn it! Why didn't you tell me your spirit weapon already had a spirit? After seeing the true power of Crane Wing Twin Swords, Child San Quan couldn't keep calm but changed colors. No, even I can't make it so powerful. Child Yunhe was also puzzled. As a pair of spirit weapons made by the successor of the legendary craftsman Oez, Crane Wing Twin Swords had a hidden property: its power depended on its user's sword talent. That kid could use such a terrible killing attack using the Crane Wing Twin Swords. Did that mean that the kid's sword talent was higher than his? How was it possible? His sword talent was acknowledged as the number one within 1,000 miles radius. If it was talking about sword talent, even Child San Quan was a little inferior to him. Crane Wing, Dance of Chaos. Yunshi also didn't expect that Hua's sword talent could combine with the Crane Wing Twin Swords so perfectly. He could even hear the satisfied quivering sound of the flying twin swords. After being forged by the successor of Oez, Crane Wing Twin Swords had never met such a super sword genius like Yunshi. At first, he could only control them for 30 seconds. After finding Yunshi's super sword talent, Crane Wing Twin Swords initiatively extended the use time. If a spirit weapon wanted to become a divine weapon, it needed not only time, but also had to have a legendary master. Swish! 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 At first, it was just a mortal rank crossing attack, but Crane Wing Twin Swords played over its usual performance, making it like hero rank chasing attacks. In order to please its new master, Yunshi, Crane Wing Twin Swords played over its usual performance. It chopped and minced Child Yunhe, its former master, and Child San Quan, who didn't even have the chance to show his abilities. After Crane Wing Twin Swords flew back to Yunshi's hands and acted as if it was a girl who walked off the stage, Yunshi opened his mouth widely and realized that he had walked through the third district leading to the ultimate Great Tower. 3 green souls flew out from their bodies and reluctantly flew into Yunshi's body. They were absorbed by Yunshi together with the souls of the other high-level stone soldiers and the soul of the unknown archer in red. Well, they're equal to 10 green hippos worth of souls. After feeling the power of the souls in his body, Yunshi grinned from ear to ear. 3 childs, what 3 wonderful gifts you are. In fact, you were the weakest 3 people of the 4 kings, right? The archer in red was more powerful than you. His power was pure and strong, and he didn't rely on any equipments. If the crane-winged twin swords belonged to the archer in red, Yunshi didn't think he could pull through the 3rd district. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.